Well, good evening, everybody. I call the special or the workshop for the Ames City Council for Tuesday, January 18th order. Welcome, council and staff. Tonight's the night that we begin review the 5-year capital improvement plan. And so without further ado, I'll turn it over to city manager and staff.
Thank you, Mayor. As you mentioned, it's our opportunity tonight to unveil our capital improvements plan, a 5-year plan that deals with fiscal years 2022-23 through 2026-27. The document before you shows expenditures of about $289 million to be spent over the 5-year period from the various sources that you're aware of, revenue sources to finance this budget. What we want to do tonight is have the department heads go through their individual plans with you. We won't go over every page. A lot of these projects just carry forward from previous years. We'll try to point out the new ones and maybe highlight some of the most important projects for you. So if we miss one, it's okay to interrupt us and say, well, you have a question on one we don't cover. That's fine too. That's all right. In terms of the plan itself, the one item I'd like to emphasize, and I think I brought this up to you during your council guideline session, is that this document earmarks about $11,238,000 from the American Rescue Plan Act, the federal funding monies that are coming to the city. That's about $11,200,000 out of a total of $14,250,000 for about 7 projects, which I think is pretty exciting. It allows us, for the first time, we'll have money to actually implement some of the capital improvements that are needed to open up the 4 areas you've listed in your long-range capital improvement, your long-range comprehensive plan, the 2040 plan. So I've earmarked those have to be spent within 2 years or obligated with 2 years. So a lot of work to be done, and those be added on. You'll see that in future pages in the document itself. Otherwise, we'll go through and have the departments highlight some of the projects, and again, interrupt as we go along, especially left out a page that's of interest to you. I think we're going to start off with Electric Services, and Mr. Com here, the director, is going to lead us through, right?
Thank you, Steve. Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, I'm Donald Com. I'm the director of Electric Services. A couple of high-level things on Electric Services. All of our revenues come from revenues, the sale of electricity. We don't have tax dollars within the electric budget specifically. Our overall budget's a little over $23.5 million. And if you can go to the next slide, please, Dwayne. So I'm going to break this up into several major groups as I go through here. Once I get to the next slide, I'll kind of explain how I got the slides laid out. So hopefully I've got it in a format that's easy to follow. So the major groups we're going to talk about are beneficial electrification. I'll explain that in a little bit. Transmission, distribution, and then there's power plants. We'll go through plants and then some general stuff and then some other things. And again, it's over the next 5 years, about $23.5 million. Next slide, please. Beneficial electrification. And the way I've got this slide set up, if the bulleted items are in black, they're typically carryovers from the previous year or they've been within the budget and you've seen them before. On my screen, it showed red. On here, it kind of shows a nice purple color. But these happen to be 2 unique projects. The page number is where you will find it within your draft book. Electric is bringing 2 projects forward. First is what we call advanced metering infrastructure. This is a multi-year project. We're first going to hire a consultant to take a look at how we can bring this and implement this. But what advanced metering infrastructure allows us to do is we, in essence, put meters out there that can do things like remote shut-off as opposed to sending somebody out to fix a meter or to do something for, let's say, non-payment. It allows us to do time of use rates or time of day rates, so we can get very unique in some of our rates as we move forward, which we believe are going to be critical in the years to come to look at conserving energy and working in a new climate limited or a climate focused utility in the years to come. It'll do things like outages. It will tell us when a particular feeder is out before anybody can even call us. The meter itself will send us a signal and say, that's out. So wonderful opportunities with the technology that's out there. The second thing that we put into the budget, you're all aware that we've started installing electric vehicle charging stations. We currently have what we call a DC fast charger. That's the real fast ones that's located down on just off of Highway 30 in Dayton. We've had one at City Hall here for a couple of years. We have one at Bandshell. We're also putting one is in the intermodal facility right now, and we'll be putting another one out in the Hy-Vee West parking lot. This budget will allow us to add additional, where we'll be looking at further enhancements or additions of the DC fast chargers, one a year, and then at least two of the what we call a level 2 chargers in those same years, and that's out for the next 3 years. The way I show the numbers, the fiscal year 22-23, that's what we have budgeted for that specific year, and then the number below that is looking at the entire budget for that subgroup over the 5-year period. So we plan on investing close to 12% of our budget in beneficial electrification projects such as advanced metering and electric vehicle infrastructure. Next page, please. When we started looking at transmission distribution.
I have one question for you.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at the projection of the number of cars that are supposed to be electric, and there's a huge movement towards this, how do we think about right sizing what we're doing for this electric vehicle infrastructure?
There's two ways to look at that. One piece of it is you have to look at, okay, within the community, where are most people going to charge? That's typically going to be at home. So one of the things that we are looking at from a engineering management standpoint is, do we have the right wires in the ground? And that's a totally different question than what this capital project is. Do we have the right size wires going to homes and things like that? This is looking at, okay, everybody hears about range anxiety and where can I plug in and how can I charge my vehicle? This will create an infrastructure that not only helps the community. In fact, URAB is talking about coming up with a method or a criteria by which we would know where to best site some of these additions that we're talking about. We want to, right now, we're trying to spread that out, but at the same time, we look at places where people will spend an hour or two, and that's where we then would focus that infrastructure so that people can drive up, stop, charge, and then go about their business, come back, and their car will have a higher level charge. Did that answer your question?
That's great. And just one follow-up. So Iowa State has thousands of people coming to Jack Trice Stadium and the Coliseum. Are we partnering with Iowa State in terms of strategically thinking about the distribution of these electric vehicle charging stations?
Well, one is at the intermodal facility. I should say two. You can charge two vehicles there. Early on in the process, we did talk to Iowa State. They've actually started installing them for themselves, but they're putting them more at their fleet department and places like that. We will continue to work with them, though, going forward. If you think about putting one, let's say, like you mentioned, at Jack Trice Stadium, one of the things we look at is if we put it out at Jack Trice Stadium and it gets used 12 Saturdays a year, that's probably not a great investment of infrastructure. So we're trying to find places that are constantly used. Mm-hmm. So maybe more like the Sheeman Building or other places on campus that have a continual flow or a continual usage by different vehicles is what we would look at.
Perfect. Thank you.
But to answer your question, I think you can expect us to ramp this up over the years, right? We're starting slow, but I think it's going to be ramped up. We'll expand it. Other things you could do, we'll talk about that later, is not only as getting back to the home one, is maybe deals with building requirements, building code requirements. We're in garages. You have to set up certain
Voltage.
The voltage in the garage. Mm-hmm. You require that of every house. There's a lot of things we could do to help promote use or support the use of electric vehicles.
Mm-hmm. Good. Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
So can I ask you one about that too?
Sure.
As long as Tim brought this up. We received at least one comment for the climate action plan that talked about Tesla fast chargers being available. Can you say something about that, Don? And I I believe I know the answer, but I think if someone's watching, they might want the
Sure.
skinny on that.
Teslas today, a Tesla charger will charge Tesla cars. A Tesla car can also be charged at what is the standard for every other car. Our focus, because we want maximum usage and maximum opportunity, we have been focusing on the what I'll call is the overall standard. And any Tesla driver, in fact, we've had them quite often at Bandshell, can charge at a normal charger. It's just that if you have any other vehicle, you can't today charge at a Tesla charger because the connection is just different. So that's why we're focusing on that today.
Thank you.
Yep.
And Don, before you go on, you have substation improvements and upgrades or whatever in the CIP, and I don't want to go through those, but are you planning ahead in terms of adding capacity in these substations to accommodate what is anticipated as a increased electric demand?
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be touching on that right near the end of this particular slide. So
You're welcome.
So from a transmission distribution standpoint, and again, just briefly going to that, transmission are the high voltage, tall wires. Distribution is the lower voltage that typically runs down most streets or is underground and then ties into the homes. From a transmission standpoint, there are two projects there that are in black, Ontario and 69 kV transmission reconstruction. They have been in our budget for several years. I won't spend much time on that. The one that's kind of purple, the 161 kV line, this is a little bit unique in that Iowa DOT approached us. We have a high voltage, we call it 161 kV or 161,000 volts running down to Ankeny along the interstate. They approached us this last year and said, we want to do some road widening on I-35. Move your line. We said, okay, we'll move our line. We need to have our line actually moved this calendar year so that they can let their project go. So you'll see that we are going to be spending close to $1 million this year and a little bit of money next year. We are working on a reimbursement agreement, so the Iowa DOT will reimburse us for all of our costs, but to properly show it in here, we at least today have to show it as an expense. But at the bottom of the page, you see that the costs are reimbursed on that. So I wanted to make special on that page 18.
So to that point, you have in the description, it says the engineering cost will be reimbursed, but the city bears some risk of reimbursement costs if engineering is accomplished and the DOT project is canceled.
So
How does that work then in terms of our risk?
So in the beginning, there's a little bit of chicken and an egg. So Iowa DOT has said, we'll reimburse you for everything. And so then they say, well, tell us how much it's going to cost so we can start budgeting it. Well, we need to do some upfront engineering work to determine, okay, are we moving 50 feet, 150 feet, how many poles? So we are spending some engineering dollars upfront to get that answer. So let's say that engineering is $100,000. We then spend that without reimbursement agreement yet. That then gets laid into the reimbursement agreement. And so it's, you pay us all of our costs to move the line, plus the upfront engineering that we did. So it's the very slight risk would be engineer it, and then they don't do the project. We would then we wouldn't have a reimbursement agreement up front. So we'd have to go back to them and say, you owe us the engineering, even though you're not moving ahead with the project. That's the slight risk. And they've never been, they've never canceled the project on us yet that we've had to move a line. And I'm sure that they would understand that we had to spend some money to get them the answers they needed up front to develop that agreement. Okay. Streetlights, that's a project that we have in there that we kind of dovetail with Public Works, where we're moving lights and lines as Public Works is doing projects. That's number 20. The next fuchsia one, the next purple one, is the electric distribution universal locker room. As you can imagine, our building is quite old out there, and we're anticipating the addition of women and others that would like to use our locker room it's not conducive for that today. So we're going to put a project in so that we can prepare our building for the future. And that's what that project is on page 22. The reliability improvements, and I would extend it, Mayor, to your question, and also talk about load serving capability. The first three are basically more from a protection standpoint. We're hardening the switchgear. The last project on there, Haber Road sub expansion, is where we would, in the future years, need to put another transformer. That's in an ideal location, and we would bring feeders out of there to handle a lot of the growth. What we have today, our vet med substation has a lot of redundancy. That's kind of our big substation that can handle a lot of that growth. But we also look at the redundancy up north at Tapa Hollow and at Stang and places like that. So I could spend 10 more minutes talking about that, but I won't. If you look, I can go back one little second. If you look at this part, so from a line standpoint, our budget for 22-23 is about $2 million. Overall, all of our transmission distribution investments are about 44% of the 5-year budget. Please. Go ahead, Dwayne, I'm sorry. When you start looking at the power plant, and I apologize because the page numbering is not the same as it is in your book, but I break these out. I've done this a couple of years now, where we break it out by units, so it's easier to talk about what are we doing with our combustion turbines and our baseload units. So the work that we're doing on our combustion units, these are our peaking units. They're expensive to run, quick to start, cheap to install. So we've got several years of improvements that we're doing there. This was identical to what was in the budget last year. Unit 7 is one of our 2 baseload units. Sits here at the end of Main Street, and as you can see, all these are in black. So you saw these last year. Most of you saw these last year, so they're on those various pages. Unit 7 is our smaller of our 2 units and is able to burn refuse-derived fuel. The overall budget on the plant for 22-23 is about $4 million. And again, this is another 44% of our 5-year budget. Next slide.
So, Don,
Yes,
on page 39, your turbine generator minor overhauls is talking about using Inconel coating on, didn't we, or not this one, but we did overhaul. Didn't we just repair these? I thought we just got finished doing
Yes.
7 and 8.
So, okay. So you could see here on this page, the last one on Unit 7, turbine minor overhaul. So what we do approximately every 5 to 6 years, or after like 20,000 hours of operation, we will open up the unit and we basically, so it's the area where the steam goes in, and basically by applying steam to it, it turns the turbine, which then runs the generator, which creates the electricity. We just finished the turbine overhaul on Unit 8. So what we try to do then is to delay the next major overhaul. We put in our budget something shorter where we just do a minor. So it's like what we call open, clean it, and close it. And while we're opening and cleaning it, we inspect it to say, okay, what things do we think we're going to need in that next major? So we do a major, a minor, and a major. Make sense?
Yeah, it does. It just didn't seem like there was 5 years between. We just finished something and we're
Correct. So
opening up again.
that may easily be able to get delayed on Unit 8 because Unit 8 was supposed to be finished last year, and we're just finishing it up now this year.
Thank you.
Next page, please. On Unit 8, it's our larger of our 2 units. Unit 8, we just finished the turbine overhaul that we were talking about. The 2 corrosion injections. So in Unit 7, we applied this Inconel coating, and it was done at the factory, and it was laser applied. We do have some tubes in Unit 8 that were stick applied, if you will. So in other words, they came in and they applied it there. And to maintain how long that lasts, there are other opportunities where you can inject like a chemical, a liquid, into the boiler while it's running to protect that. One of the common stuff is called moose drool, and it's not a beer. It's actually something that's used to eliminate the chlorine contact or attack on the pipes. Precipitator reconstruction has been on there before. Here's the other half of that, the turbine minor overhaul, again on page 39. After looking at the units, we have certain infrastructure within the plant itself. So we've got some building modifications in there. And that includes getting it ADA compliant. And we're also doing some work there on this year on bringing in a universal locker room in the power plant also. Fire protection's an ongoing projects where we're kind of looking at different aspects of that and how to protect the unit from fires. The other three have been on the budget, and I can talk in more detail on any of those. I will point out the critical system generators. This is something that we learned from Derecho. We are currently working and have been testing a scheme that we can what's called black start or start from a cold bus. And we're looking at that. We may need some generation, and that was in the budget last year, and we'll have a plan on that this year, later on this year.
Just two quick questions on that. One is there a reason why you're not doing the generator for until fiscal year 23, 24? Do you have to do some advanced planning, or what's the reason for that?
So right now what we're doing is basically we're going through a study, and we're examining what's called our gas turbine number 1, which is an older unit. It starts using air, and before we simply just pop in a new generator, we're going through the process or the steps on what does it take to have enough air there. Once we have enough air, do we have enough power to close in the breakers? So rather than just pop in another generator, we're first making sure what our systems are, and then we can right size and put the generator where we need it.
And I was just kind of surprised by the engineering number. The project construction is 300,000 and engineering is 200,000. I was just surprised at the amount of engineering. Is there a reason for the high price for the engineering side?
Yeah, the biggest thing are trying to figure out the controls trying to properly design the controls on GT1 so that oftentimes when you do controls, you specify that you don't want a generator to close in what's called a dead bus. You don't want to have something running and saying, okay, close into that. So we're fundamentally having to walk through the logic that was written on that unit and rechange it to say, in a certain situation, if the lights are out in Ames, go ahead and tie into a dead bus, start bringing the lights up. And that, if you can imagine the logic that goes into the protection schemes in the power plant, this is one that we have to be very, very careful on.
Very, very complicated. Understand. Thank you.
So next page, please. The other systems that we have, so we have fuel and waste systems. We have a refuse-derived fuel bin. This is the bin that is used when Public Works Resource Recovery takes the county's garbage. They process it, make it into refuse-derived fuel. It's a fancy word for processed garbage. And we have a project in there now to work on it. It's in the current year's budget, but we know we have to maintain it. So all you see on page 40 is about 300,000 several years out to continue to keep it in good working order. Coal yard, we haven't used coal here since 2015, and we have some money in there to reclaim that. It may turn out that we use that in a waste to energy study. It may become a green space, but we have money a little bit farther out there on what we can do with it. Fuel oil tank removal. We don't burn fuel oil in any of our power plants. They are underground. Eventually, we want to take those out. There's no rush to do that, but we have a project out there in the future then to eventually remove those tanks. Other things, and again, these were in the budget last year. One is a plant-wide Wi-Fi network. There's a lot of the new equipment where you, rather than running wires and cables all over the place, you can actually monitor generation using Wi-Fi. And then last, unit 5 and 6 boiler removal. These are two old boilers that I think we shut down probably in the 80s. We have money in there to remove it this year. The reason why there's money there now is that may be a preferred site for our waste to energy facility moving forward. If we find a different location, that money can easily be delayed or taken out, but we at least wanted to plan for it if that's the right location for that to go. Next slide. So points basically in our 22-23 budget, we were focusing first on power plant improvements to maintain the reliability of the city's grid. We're still not happy with what happened at during the derecho, and that's been a big focus in the power plant and how we design that to be more resilient. Beneficial electrification, we are starting to do that with the metering, with the electric vehicle charging, because we got to prepare for our future, which will be changing in the years to come. COVID has continued to cause material lead time delays, meters specifically. It was taking what normally would take weeks, was taking months. Fortunately, we've gotten a shipment in meters now. That's important because the meter is the cash register of the utility. So we want to make sure we have an ample supply of meters that are operating correctly. So fortunately, we just got some in, but other equipment. Mentioned the derecho, learn from the derecho, and testing and designing the black start capabilities so that we are capable of taking care of ourselves. If the world falls down around us, can we start up and can we restore power more quickly to the residents of Ames? And then finally, improve the power plant boiler life to continue to burn refuse-derived fuel, what we perceive for the next several years as we finish up the waste energy study, which we believe then the results of that will be our long-term solution on how to deal with the county's garbage. I'm available for questions.
Don, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. I said,
Don, do we anticipate using any money that we might get from the infrastructure bill for electrical resilience?
And it's my understanding, and somebody can correct me, but most of the infrastructure money goes towards water and streets and is not typically set up for electrical systems, especially municipal electric systems. I guess I'd look to Dwayne or anyone else that.
Yeah, they haven't passed it.
They haven't
We haven't passed it yet, no.
Okay.
The thing we were hearing from that bill is though, money we pass through the state and the state will be competitive. And you'll have to, unlike the ARPA, which we're guaranteed a certain amount of money, we'll have to compete against it. So we have to see what the actual rules are, what will be eligible. We'll certainly try to take advantage of it, but I don't know how we'll fare in a competition mode with other cities or other utilities. Yeah, I don't know how they'll count this electric utilities either.
Yeah, the last time I looked at it was when we were meeting with the U.S. Department of Transportation. And so we looked at the various categories, and there was some money at one time for electrical infrastructure and resiliency, but I'm not sure if it's still there, and who knows whether it'll get passed.
Right.
But I'd like us to be able to use it if it comes through the pipeline somehow.
All right. We'll start investigating that.
any other questions? Very good.
Thank you.
Don, appreciate it.
Thanks, Don.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Neil Weiss. I'm the Assistant Director of the Water and Pollution Control Department. It's my pleasure tonight to share our 5-year capital improvements plan with you. Before I begin tonight, I'd like to recognize those individuals that really helped to make all these projects come to life and really make them happen. With me here tonight is Ashley Giesman, one of our environmental engineers, as well as Dustin Albrecht, one of our environmental specialists. So both Ashley and Dustin help out with all aspects of project management, all the way from initial design estimates to the design phase, the bidding phase, all the way through construction closeout and the warranty phase of these projects. So without them, these certainly wouldn't happen. I just wanted to recognize them for all that they do. like to start for you on the drinking water production and treatment side with our first project being shown on page 45. Next slide, please. This is our North River Valley well field project. This will be a brand new well field that will include 3 wells initially. We're hoping to expand this sometime in the future to additional 2 or maybe 3 wells. This project scope will include a pipeline to transmit water back to the water plant, as well as include standby power as part of that scope. This will certainly help to increase reliability during future storm events. During the trade show, we actually did see where we lost power to some of our well fields. The schedule for this project has been delayed due to an extensive environmental review process. We did recently complete that process. We're currently in the process of obtaining a construction permit with the state, and we hope to bid this project this coming spring for construction summer into fall of this year. On page 46 is a project to demolish all the main treatment structures at our old water plant site. This project scope originally included some additions to the technical services complex, but that has now been split out into its own separate CIP page, which you'll see on the following slide. The schedule for this project has been delayed due to an asbestos study that we had to do for the site, as well as an extensive review by the state for the funding aspect of this project. We're about a 90% design level currently. We're hoping to bid this project this coming spring for construction this summer. Shown on page 47 is that new CIP page, which entails the addition to the technical services complex. The scope for this project will include the addition of a training room. We're anticipating additional vehicle and equipment storage. There'll be an elevator added to improve some accessibility, as well as renovating some of the existing building that was constructed in 1989. This will include updating the old HVAC system. We intend to add an office space, a lactation room, as well as just a general refresh throughout the building of some of the finishes.
When you're doing that renovation of the existing building, I know that the corridors upstairs are pretty narrow. Are you going to do an ADA review too to make sure you have access to all the rooms? That might be the time to do it.
We haven't included that in the preliminary project scope, but with the addition of the elevator, I think that's something we can certainly consider once we do hire an architect for designing this project.
And also ADA bathrooms for sake of discussion too. So.
Yes. Yep. We have thought about including the ADA restrooms.
Thanks.
Page 48 is a collection of major maintenance and equipment replacements throughout the facility. I'd like to highlight 2 elements of this project in particular. Shown in year 1 is dehumidification of the lime slaking building. This area of the plant is really the heart of the lime softening process. And as part of this process, there's a chemical reaction that takes place that produces heat and increases the humidity in this area. So in doing this project, we hope to extend the life of coatings in this area particularly, and also the electrical components, electrical systems too, making sure those can last as long as possible. Following that dehumidification project in year 4, our plan is to add a 3rd slaker to the system. This will certainly help to improve redundancy with the system, as well as add flexibility for the operations of that lime slaking system.
I have a question before we move on.
Yep.
So lots of national attention being given to cybersecurity concerns with respect to water treatment facilities. I assume that when I've talked with Steve on this, these are things that we're working on, but are these issues for a CIP budget that we should see, or more on the general budget?
Yes, as part of our CIP, we are focusing on some cyber improvements. Actually, on the next slide here, I'll talk about.
Perfect.
We'll talk about some of those.
Yeah, I'll let you.
Well, page 49 here. It'll actually be on our following slide after this one, I believe. Page 49 is our remote site fiber installation. This will extend a fiber network to our offsite locations to things such as our wells, pump stations, water tower sites, back to the water plant through that fiber connection. This will help to improve communication and also the reliability of communication. And this will piggyback on the Public Works Intelligent Transportation System project. So we certainly want to say thanks to to Damian and John Joyner for including us in their larger project. This certainly wouldn't be feasible for our department to take on as a standalone project.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry, this is where you want to go.
Page 50 is our new project that focuses on various physical and cybersecurity improvements. This project will include multiple different aspects. So some of the main aspects will be cyber improvements to the main control system at the plant. There's currently many different systems tied to this main control system. We'd like to separate those off of that control system as much as possible to really minimize the number of penetrations through the firewall. There'll be various access control improvements as well as part of this project. We'll include electronic keypad access at some of our remote site locations, as well as add some fencing around places like wells, and also some additional fencing at the water plant at some critical areas to really increase the physical security. We also plan to add security cameras at remote site locations following that fiber project, as well as adding and replacing some security cameras at the plant itself for increased physical security.
Neil, can you just touch on that in terms of the Tim's question on what currently security is in place in terms of trying to avoid any kind of a breach or someone getting in to, probably most people heard about I think happened in Florida, someone got in, was able to dump a bunch of extra chlorine or hyperchlorite, whatever it is, into the water. And I think that you've talked before about what we have so that our public knows that there's already good protection, and what additional measures are you going to be taking to try and prevent that from happening?
Sure. Well, we do have many physical security measures in place with fencing surrounding most all of our water treatment plant. We do have security cameras that are monitored 24/7 by our plant operations staff, who is there all the time. So those are some of the main physical security aspects. As far as cybersecurity, our control system is on its own network, separated by firewalls. So in that first bullet point, this will be to even improve that system further than what it is currently isolated. We really want to keep that isolated as much as we can to really avoid any outside interaction with our plant control system. That's really critical for us.
And which is that this current year? Is it this fiscal year? Is that included in that coming this year?
Yeah, that issue that you referred to specifically in Florida, we were alerted the same day that it happened through the trade associations, and within a couple of days, we had a list of recommended best practices that would have prevented what happened there. We reviewed those with the city IT folks, and everything on that list we already had in place. So the things that we're looking at doing is going above and beyond what's already there.
Thank you.
Sort of the challenge is the private sector has put billions of dollars into cybersecurity protection. Government is a little bit behind the curve in terms of these measures. And so we're not experts up here. So, we would encourage working with people, with consultants to make sure we're following best practices. But I'm super encouraged with the things that you've outlined tonight.
Yeah, and I will note just a preview to the operating budget coming up. We are going to recommend the addition of a SCADA technician to our staff so that we have somebody who can, I don't speak computerese, but if we can get a SCADA technician on staff, somebody that knows our control systems, and they can help us translate and walk that between the two worlds of the computer world and the water treatment and wastewater treatment world.
Great. Thank you so much.
Is I know that electric plant has SCADA system too, right? So would that technician be able to actually help both electric and water, or you need a full-time SCADA and they need eventually a full-time SCADA technician?
Yeah, we've been talking for probably 10 years about the need for having this. And the reason that it never came all the way forward is we didn't feel like we had 40 hours a week worth of work for that person to do. Now we feel like we are at the point where we do have enough work to keep that person busy all week long.
Shown on page 51 is improvements to our pump station located at State Avenue and Mortensen Road. This will include the addition of a fourth pump shown in year 2, and will also include standby power. We've accelerated that standby power by 1 year as a result of the derecho event where we actually did lose power to this pump station. This pump station itself is very critical in providing the needed pressure to West Ames. And as we're seeing increased growth in West Ames, this is becoming more and more critical. Page 52 is our advanced metering infrastructure. This has been a multi-year project to update our water meter reading system to a newer technology to allow those walk-by and drive-by reads. This project started back in 2014. And by the end of this fiscal year, it will be about 75% complete. It is scheduled to conclude in year 2 of our CIP. Just to note that this CIP page only includes the additional meters necessary to do this entire change out. Once that project's complete, we intend for this page to go away and for the operating budget to remain at a consistent level for replacements. Page 53 is our periodic monitoring at Ada Hayden. This is a 2-year back-to-back monitoring event that we have scheduled to take place every 5 years. It's really doing an in-depth condition assessment of the wetland complexes surrounding the lake and Ada Hayden Lake itself. These assessments have shown over the years that the wetlands are doing what they were intended to do in capturing sediment and nutrients. But what we've seen over the last several years is some of these wetlands in particular are silting in. We've actually teamed up with Parks and Rec. Ashley Giesman in our department has been helping out with a design project to dredge one of these wetlands in particular. We hope that that work can happen late spring into summer of this year. Page 54 is some improvements to our lime lagoons. These are used to store and dewater lime softening residuals that are a byproduct of the treatment process. We currently recycle 100% of these residuals. They're actually applied to farm fields and used as a soil conditioner. This past summer, we did do some improvements to the drainage structure in our oldest lime lagoon. We plan to do those same improvements shown in year 3, followed by construction of a new cell shown in year 4 in our plan.
So Neil, I noticed in the comments that some of those tiles get damaged due to excavation, but by the backhoe. Is there any way to protect those tiles so the drainage can continue or going deeper, or what thoughts do you have on that?
Yeah, so that was one of the main reason for those repairs of that oldest lime lagoon. We did move in those tiles to the center more so they couldn't be damaged as much by the excavator for the reach.
Mm-hmm.
And also did put in some tape and stuff to identify at what level the trenches are for the excavator operator. So we have put in some mitigation measures in place there.
Great. Thanks.
Page 55 is our East Industrial Elevated Tank. This new water tower will help maintain pressure and also the needed volume of water for fire protection with the Prairie View Industrial Center. We have updated and increased this cost estimate just based on the recent bidding climate and the cost estimates we have received lately. It is showing being delayed as 1 year, but as that pace of development in Prairie View Industrial Center happens, we can certainly move this forward to match that pace. Page 56 is our well controls rehabilitation. This is a replacement of a controls component called a programmable logic controller, or PLCs, that are associated with our wells. These PLCs are essential to stay ahead of as technology improves, and also these older models are no longer supported or available. We have this scheduled to take place every 10 years in our CIP. And page 57 is the last project on our drinking water side. This is the demolition of the Iowa Creek pump station. This was removed from our CIP 3 years ago to pursue selling the property. When that person backed out, we did add this back in last year to our CIP. It is showing to be demolished in year 4, unless there's another use for this facility by a city department or another interested party. I can move for you now to the water pollution control facility. The first project is shown on page 59 and is our nutrient reduction modifications that will happen at the treatment plant. There's no change to the overall plan for this project. Just a reminder that the goal is that we're trying to achieve is the target total nitrogen, total phosphorus goals of the Iowa nutrient reduction strategy. We plan to do this over a period of 20 years in 3 discrete phases. So as you see in the project schedule, phase 1 design shows in year 1 in the CIP, with construction shown in years 2 and 3.
So would the SCADA technician work both at the water plant and the water pollution control facility both then?
Yes, that's our intent, that position would be housed in the administration group, and then their time would be split between the 2 plants.
And is that SCADA getting put in? No, I presume, again, you got security out there in terms of not having discharge and violating our, how many years is it straight that we've have
32 years.
perfect discharge or whatever? So anyway.
So when we got on council 8 years ago, this project was slated, I believe, at 23 million, if my memory is correct. This is quite an increase then in the price tag of this project. Any thoughts on why is the cost expanded so much?
Well, the estimate that was in there originally was before we had done a preliminary study, so that was really just an informed guess, maybe would be the way I'd characterize it. What our consultants did when we did the feasibility study in 2018 was they crafted a plan that would let us tackle this in discrete phases, and each phase was really timed to match with the remaining useful life of the infrastructure that would be taken out. One of the things that wasn't included in that original estimate that you're recalling is the expense to repack the media and the trickling filters at the plant. That media is expected to have a life of between 25 and 35 years, and we're at 32. So that's part of why that's in that first phase, is to replace those. But if we didn't do the nutrient reduction and we had to repack those towers, that would be roughly an $8 million expense just by itself.
Okay, so this revised number is taking into account some of the other maintenance that would otherwise have to be done.
Yes.
All right, thank you. That's helpful. Yep.
Yeah, and the cost of the nutrient reduction project itself is unchanged. There were some elements that we had in other places in the CIP that would actually happen as a part of this project. So we've just gathered those all together. And so the cost change that you see is from moving like the SCADA servers and the PLCs into this project.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Yeah.
Page 60 is a cogeneration system maintenance. This system is responsible for providing approximately 20% of the facility's total electrical needs. We are showing 2 elements in year 1 with some regular maintenance on both of our methane engines. We're also showing some improvements to our fats, oils, and grease, or FOG, receiving station. This will include demolishing the existing FOG tank and adding new receiving equipment and a larger storage tank for that facility. Just to note, we are working with, or we have had conversations with Resource Recovery and Bill Smith's group. We would like to add an aspect of accepting food waste with this new station. That could ultimately be introduced into our digesters, produce gas, and we could be creating electricity from that added food waste. So they will certainly be included as we move forward in design with this project over these next 6 months to a year. And we'll certainly work through that together with them if that could be included.
Well, that's very exciting. If we could find a way to do that, I think the community would be very, very pleased. I mean, we have a lot to work out in terms of how we get it. Product there, but I mean, that's to be able to utilize this, that's really a terrific development. That's the first I've heard of this.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's perfectly compatible with the digestion process at the plant. The logistics of getting it from resource recovery to WPC is really the challenge that we've got to figure out.
How much can you use? Is there I mean, obviously there's a maximum, but do you have a sense for what that is?
I would say that in terms of the food waste, we're probably unlimited. The digesters have a lot of additional excess capacity right now. And the tons of food waste that would likely be able to be diverted there would not make a meaningful dent in that capacity.
Wow.
So this would replace the composting that is being done with food waste diversion, is that right?
In theory.
Yes, it could.
Okay, so I had a conversation with a supervisor last night, interestingly enough, and they're interested in partnering with the city on composting. So I don't know how that would work, or if they would have more, could be directed, but this is really, as Tim says, pretty intriguing and pretty innovative. And so it's,
Again, food waste diversion has been a thing many cities are looking at. So there have been some grant opportunities out there that we are kind of keeping our eye on. And we'll certainly be working with Bill's group if we do see those come up, where we could help pay for part of this project.
that's really cool.
Page 61 is a collection of equipment repairs and major maintenance tasks at the facility. There's a new element that I'd like to highlight shown in year one. This is the renovation of the administration building. This scope element was originally included in the larger nutrient reduction modifications project, but it has been split out into this page to hopefully get this project done before the larger construction project happens. This building was constructed in 1988 with original plant construction, and at that time, our laboratory services division was housed in this building. And they've since moved uptown to the old water plant location. So there's a big portion of this admin building that's currently being underutilized. We'd like to convert a lot of that space to a training room, as well as do some upgrades such as adding additional ADA restrooms, updating the locker rooms, and also just a general refresh of some of the finishes throughout this building.
Are you also going to those universal locker rooms that the electric services are talking about?
We haven't had that discussion internally yet. We are set up with 2 locker rooms right now, but it certainly could be added to this project.
Yeah, we hadn't talked about locker rooms specifically, but restrooms, we were going to go to instead of having individual sex restrooms, we were just going to put a collection of unisex restrooms in.
Page 62 is our watershed-based nutrient reduction. These are projects that we're looking at doing outside of the facility in the watershed, in and around Ames and Story County. We're really relying on experts that have already been doing this work. So we've been partnering with a lot of different entities over the years. Some of these include nonprofits like Prairie Rivers of Iowa. Story County Conservation has been a big one for us. Iowa Soybean Association, Ducks Unlimited, and Iowa Department of Agricultural and Land Stewardship has been a big funder of a lot of these projects. So through all these collaborations, we have a number of large projects in development now. Just like to highlight 3 of those for you quickly here. The first one being a wetland project that will be located northwest of Ames. This is a partnership with Story County, Ducks Unlimited, and IDOLS. It'll be about a 20-acre wetland in size. Currently working on preliminary design with Ducks Unlimited, and a lot of this will be coming through the WQI program with IDOLS. We partner with Parks and Rec on a land retirement project associated with Moore Memorial Park. There's about 35 acres there that was formerly corn and soybeans. We will be transitioning that to prairie this coming spring. And then lastly is a project that you've seen recently is our saturated buffer and bioreactor project. It's a partnership with Story County, Polk County, and IDOLS. So we'll essentially place 25 to 30 of these sites around the county this coming summer. And it'll treat approximately 1,200 acres for nitrate reduction. Page 63 is our electrical system maintenance. This involves cleaning and preventative maintenance on the main switchgear at the facility. Over time with the environment, this can get covered in dust and debris. It can ultimately lead to damage. As far as the cost change and scope change that you see in our CIP page, that involves changing from a 5-year to a 6-year cleaning schedule, and also adding the addition of an inspection in between those cleanings. Page 64 is a project located inside the raw water pump station. This is where the very first treatment steps of the whole entire process take place. This is where things like rags, sticks, rocks, sand, and grit are removed before going downstream and damaging things like pumps and other equipment. This will be a planned replacement of a lot of the the equipment in this room, such as mechanical bar screens, our grit removal system, the grit conveyor belts, as well as valve replacements, pipe replacements, and associated pipe supports. Page 65 is some improvements to our lift stations. This project will have two main elements, with the first one shown in year 4 is to connect 3 of these lift stations with fiber optic cabling. This again will help with communication, reliability of communication with these sites, and also allow us to add additional security measures in the future, like some of those security cameras. And the second element is a new element, and that's to rehab Freel lift drive station, replacing some of the pumps and also the controls at that station. Page 66 is our last project on water pollution control side. This is a new project involving clarifier maintenance, and in particular, the structural steel members of these clarifiers. This is a harsh environment for steel, and to prevent against corrosion, we need to stay ahead of these sandblasting and painting projects. So that's what this project will address. And that is it. I'd be happy to take any questions from council.
Any questions? Thanks, Neil. Thanks, John. Thank both of the project managers, and
Thank you.
Really good.
It's very random that I would remember this $23 million figure, but it's just that number stuck in my craw for so long that we were having. And the thing you have to know about this is that cities are only responsible for about 2 or 3% of the nitrogen that goes into the Mississippi. It's 96 to 98% farms. And yet the cities are being tagged in Iowa for $1 billion of improvements that are going to make it negligible. It's a crazy situation.
I can imagine that you would remember.
Yeah.
Why is that number going up
Yeah.
even more?
Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. As we get started tonight, I'd like to introduce and thank the Public Works division heads that put a lot of work into creating this draft CIP, and then, of course, do a lot of work throughout the year, making sure that these things get implemented. So we have Tracy Peterson, division head for engineering, Damian Pregitzer with traffic, Justin Clausen with operations, Bill Schmidt with resource recovery, and McKinley Ritter with administration. And thanks to McKinley for putting the slideshow together. And one of the first things you'll see is just a quick video that recaps some of the CIP accomplishments that we had during the 2021 construction year. And I'd like to thank Bill Gebhardt and his staff for helping put that together. And I also wanted to just take a second to thank the office and field team members that we have to make sure that these projects are successful and the great work they put in all year long as well. So tonight, Public Works has projects that are in the utilities program and the transportation program. So we'll get started in utilities with water distribution. On page 68, this is one of two different programs that you'll see. The other one's in sanitary that utilizes the ARPA money that Steve mentioned earlier to put water infrastructure and sanitary sewer infrastructure that meets the needs for the Plan 2040 that council recently approved. So we get started on page 68 with water. So this shows the 3 water projects that we'll be doing with the ARPA funds. And then on page 69, this is our regular annual water system improvement program. And this map shows the 4-inch water mains that are around town in blue. And this kind of goes hand in hand with a memo that went out in the non-agenda packet on Friday that council requested from Tracy Peterson that was requested by a citizen and referred by council, detailing the amount of 4-inch that's left in service as well as the amount of 6-inch water mains that are left. Then in sanitary on page 71, we have the partner program for sewer utilizing the ARPA funds. We have 2 slides because we have 5 different projects. So this shows some of the sanitary projects that we'll be undertaking, kind of the northwest part of town there on the left, East 13th extension on the right. And then these 3 projects are East Industrial or Prairie View on the left, Southwest Growth area in the middle, and then south of Ken Merrill on the far right there. Next, we move into the stormwater activity. So we have a few annual programs here. One I want to highlight is the Stormwater Erosion Control Program on page 75. And we'll be doing bank stabilization along Clear Creek, and that's the western edge of town, south of Ontario. And then rounding out utilities, we have resource recovery. So our CIP program for resource recovery is our larger maintenance activities that Bill Schmidt and his staff plan out over the 5-year period. Next, we move into the transportation program, and we begin with the street improvement activities. You can see here the overview of the 5-year plan. And in the first year, we have some annual programs, Seal Coat on page 90, downtown street improvements, which now we're moving, that's an ongoing program that we've done for several years. Now we're moving into the alleys in downtown. And then our right-of-way restoration that focuses on restoring construction projects throughout the community. But a few of these that I want to highlight are the Cyride Route program on page 87. For this program, we'll be doing Lincoln Way from Beetle to Franklin. Next on page 88 is the concrete pavement improvement program. The neighborhood we'll be focusing on with this program is east of Brookside Park and west of the Union Pacific Railroad. just north of 6th Street. And one additional project that I've shown on this sheet is at the bottom in green, and that's our alley paving improvements, and that can be found on page 91. Next, we have asphalt street pavement improvements on page 89. So the two projects we'll be looking at with this program are Oakwood Road, and that'll be from its entire stretch from State to University to the roundabout. And then 28th Street, Hoover to Ferndale. Continuing in the transportation program, we have shared use paths next. So those are our three programs within shared use path. The next slide shows a broader overview of our entire CIP and all the different projects that include bike and shared use path improvements. So you see there's 4 different activities listed here, including and in addition to the shared use path activity. Council had previously directed us to do on average at least $1.2 million of improvements per year. And this plan includes 1.44 million per year. So a couple of the programs that I wanted to highlight on page 100, we have shared use path expansion. And this will be connecting a shared use path from Lincoln Way on Grand up to the on-street bike lanes at 6th Street. I want to take just a moment here to...
John, if I could.
Sure.
So is the plan, if you go back a page, is the plan then to continue going north eventually?
Yeah, the long-range plan does show connection with the path that's been extended from the north down to, I believe, Murray at this point.
16th maybe.
Yeah, Damon, do you know the timing?
The big issue there is we need to figure out what kind of improvement needs to be done at 13th and Grand. And then all the right-of-way impacts from 6th Street north up to Murray where it stops. So there's some additional planning that needs to be done, but in the long-term plan, this connection would connect up to Murray, on Murray and Grand where it stops now.
Great, thank you.
So there's just some logistics issues to work out.
Great, thank you.
So on page 102, we have the shared use path maintenance program. This program has been in the CIP for many years. However, this year we're increasing the focus. As you can see here, the first year of the CIP continues what we have traditionally had of a funding level of $125,000. Over the 5-year period of this CIP, we propose to increase that to $450,000 per year for shared use path maintenance. And then you can see the impact there on the right as far as scheduled work activities. So by increasing this to the proposed $450,000 every 5 years, and this is on a system-wide level, every 5 years we'll be able to at some point do joint sealing and slurry sealing of the paths. And then every 20 years we'll be able to do an overlay. And then we'll plan for a full replacement cycle every 40 years. So this will really increase the level and frequency of maintenance on our system.
John, before you go on to the traffic improvements, I wanted to ask about the alley paving. Are we still doing any permeable sections in the downtown alleys at all, or are we doing that in other places? I see Tracy is looking like she might say something. I don't know.
Sure, come on.
Well, we used some permeable concrete on Gilchrist and some areas that haven't really held up quite as well. So I would suggest if we're going to do some, then we look more at paper like we used in the parking lot. But right now we are not. We're looking at still concrete, but it is, a lot of communities have gone to what they're calling green alleys, where they are using permeable and getting really good success with that.
I hope we're going to have an opportunity to go back to exploring the permeable materials again, because I like that idea, and I think the back parking lot is a great example of how it can hold up and really create a good dry surface for a place that's typically wet.
Next, in the traffic improvement activity, there's a couple of programs I want to highlight here on the next two slides. But before we do that, I don't have a slide for it, but I just wanted to point out the Intelligent Transportation System program. That's the fiber connectivity and the traffic adaptive signal conversion program. And I wanted just to let everyone know that Damien heard word this week that DOT has approved our third multi-million-dollar grant. So I want to thank the DOT. They've been instrumental in their support and moving this program forward. And we'll start seeing the first conduit and fiber in the ground this summer. So on page 106, we have traffic system capacity improvements. So we're looking at corridor studies in the South Duff area, and then also on 190th from Carver to 69. These were both identified in the long-range transportation plan. 107 is our traffic signal program, and this year's location will be removing the temp signal at State and Mortensen and replacing that with a permanent signal.
Sorry, John, I was trying to find it. So this is on page 106. Just back one slide. So this is where we put the temporary stoplight at Hyde and
190th.
Right. If you look at the left inset, that's exactly in the middle of the green box.
So this is where Transportation Committee talked about wanting to potentially accelerate some potential improvements. But first of all, you got to do a study. And so this study is included in this next fiscal year. Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Very good. Thank you. Yep.
And next, in transportation, we have street rehabilitation. So these are our larger maintenance projects in the street and right-of-way. Two programs I want to highlight, starting with Bridge Rehab Program on page 112. This will be adding on a shared use extension to the Iowa Creek Bridge on South 4th Street. And then also a connecting shared use path goes along with that bridge extension.
So go back to just why I apologize. So hang on one second. So university. So I apologize. I thought we were placing that on the north side of, I apologize. I'm thinking of South 16th. This is South 4th.
Right.
Yeah.
South 16th is included.
Yeah. Okay.
The widening project.
Great. My apologies. Thank you.
No problem. Thanks. And then on page 115, this will be the completion of the Main Street sidewalk paver replacement. So we have completed the section from Clark to Burnett. We have under contract Burnett to Kellogg. And the current funding allows us to purchase the materials for Kellogg to Duff. So what you see proposed here in the first year of the CIP is just for the construction then of the pavers from Kellogg to Duff. So that'll finish out the program all the way from Kellogg to Duff.
Just out of curiosity, how is the salting going on the new pavers?
Have you been able to observe anything out there?
So far, so good. Using less than we have in the past, from what I can observe to date. So I think so far our efforts are working. Of course, we've only got one block of it done. We'll continue that same outreach as we continue along through the rest of the project.
I know that was a discussion point that you made very clear that it's important that they don't just throw down copious amounts of salt knowing that it's in shade. And so I thought Ames Main Street was going to try and help get the word out also to all the property owners to try and, so we can extend the life of the pavers.
So then rounding out the transportation section is our airport activity, our airport improvement program. That sheet is on page 125. I don't have a specific slide for it, but work in this program includes pavement rehabilitation, drainage improvements, fencing to improve safety and protect from wildlife, and also lighting reconstruction.
I would like to point out, this is a major change in our philosophy on our airport improvements. Many times we used our airport construction fund to match or provide the local match for the federal funding. Given the magnitude of the projects that are included in our master plan, we're probably not going to have enough money in the airport construction fund to match. So for the first time, you've seen general obligation bonds there to finance these projects. Now, they're allowed under central corporate purpose, so they don't require a vote. But based on our projection for the airport construction fund, we'll need to supplement that with general obligation bonds if we continue those projects. That's a new philosophy there.
I was shocked to see $2 million for wildlife fencing around the airport. Is that a problem that they have right now? Is wildlife getting in, or?
Yeah, it's certainly a significant safety problem if that were to expand.
You got to put the collars around them so they
Yeah.
visible fence.
And say I wouldn't want a deer running in front of my plane while I'm landing.
It's not a normal fence. It'll be very tall. Very secure, and it's very below the surface. So it's an elaborate fence. I'll put it.
Yeah.
And it gets approved by the federal government. They don't do anything easy.
It's also a lot of footage too, I imagine.
Yeah. Very well.
I understand from our FBO that we were hitting record fuel sales recently out at the airport because of so much charter traffic. So I think all of these investments are good for business at the airport right now.
I had a traffic-related question. The resurfacing of Highway 69 that's listed on page 117 on Grand, obviously, from Murray to Lincoln Way. Quite a big chunk of that. How expensive is that resurfacing? And then also, is the timing of that such that so we're doing the shared use path in 22-23 on Grand from Lincoln Way to 6th. Is the timing of those such that it would be smart to do them at the same time if they're already having to disrupt things to do resurfacing on Grand while we're under the bridge working on that shared use path?
Yeah, that's something that we can look at. This would be a DOT-led project. And then this would be our share of that DOT project. But we could look at the possibility of doing that connection at this time. We wouldn't be able, as Damien explained, to do the connection through 13th Street, but we may be able to bring it north and south to that area.
Right. Yeah, I know. Yeah, you'd still have, I mean, Murray to 6th, this sort of doesn't matter, but the 6th to Lincoln Way part, I just thought it's a year off. One's 22, 23, one's 23, 24, and I didn't know if that is something you're thinking of looking at.
Yeah, we'll certainly take a look at that and talk with the DOT.
Well, getting from Murray to 13th Street connects you with the east-west connection on 13th. And then getting up to 6th Street from Lincoln Way then gets you into Brookside and that westerly connection. So, so I agree. I think this is the time to prioritize those projects.
Yeah, we'll certainly look at that. Yeah, and as you mentioned, this is a year out, so we've got some time to work with the DOT on that.
Yeah. That's all. Thanks.
And one follow-up on resource recovery. So page 81 shows the plan maintenance that goes into this thing. we haven't had the report back yet on evaluating the viability of doing something different with our resource recovery plant. So if that were to come about, then this would all be revisited in light of that new plan. Do we have any estimate as far as from the consultant as far as when they project that report to be provided?
Yeah, we're working hard with them on the financial model right now of the different options. So we need to get that financial model accurate for all the different options. So I would think it'd probably be early spring. Yeah, probably early spring that we'll be bringing that report back with the options to council.
So we have to just continue going forward with sort of thinking two different paths at one time. Either we have to keep together what we have, but also hopefully we'll have something towards a new resource recovery plant.
Yeah, the timing will work out well. As you point out, this CIP is just taking a look at continuing operations in the existing configuration. And after we make that report to council, should council direct us in a different path, a different type of improvement, then as we prepare this CIP in the fall of 22 for going forward, then we'd make certainly whatever adjustments need to be made for whatever direction council may give us this spring.
It's a lot of money that we're spending on the resource recovery plant. If we knew we were going to do a new one, then, and none of us have a crystal ball, I doubt we would spend nearly what we're spending, because we're spending money now for long-term maintenance.
Right.
So it's sort of tough to spend this kind of money, but I don't know that we have a choice.
Well, we'll hold off until we get a final decision on council direction. We won't make any major changes. But
Okay.
But even if you wanted to close it down or build something new, you're 3 years away. You're going to have to keep this project moving along.
No
You wouldn't
question.
make a major improvements. I understand.
Yeah.
But within 3 or 4 months, we'll know where we're going to go. And we're still approaching the beginning of the fiscal year. So.
Yep. Good. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure, John.
Good job.
Thank you, everybody.
You get extra credit with that little video you played at the beginning.
I know, that was great.
Use it. Good job, Joe.
I'd love to see the resource recovery plant. It's huge.
Sure.
Move it off Lincoln Way.
Yeah.
Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to start by introducing the division managers that I have with me tonight. So I have Chris Crippen, Assistant Director of Operations, and then James Rendell, Assistant Director of Fleet and Facilities. Apparently my phone's ringing now that I'm sitting here. So the SIRIDE portion of the CIP starts on page 118 and was approved by the Transit Board in our December board meeting. Approximately $19.4 million is programmed into capital improvement projects over the next 5 years. Go back 4 years. As we developed the CIP, we tried to take a conservative approach to ensure that there was adequate funding for future capital projects. We've also put a few capital projects on hold as we kind of adjust to new ridership levels and patterns. The projects outlined in the CIP do support our goal of connecting people to the community with safe and efficient transportation that exceeds customers' expectations. It also supports the community and City Council's goal of reducing carbon emissions and providing a sustainable community in which to live. Now you can go. So implementation of the transit portion of the CIP is very dependent on the availability of federal, state, and local funding. And when we develop it, we kind of prioritize it based with the greatest emphasis on vehicle replacement and rehabilitation, and then building improvements and expansion. So maintaining our fleet is really essential to SIRIDE's continued success. It aligns with one of our core priorities of keeping our equipment in a state of good repair, which obviously is imperative to safety, and it's also an FTA regulation. Investing in vehicles and alternative fuel vehicles, which I'll talk about in just a moment, really supports the goal of overall sustainability. And under building improvements or facilities and grounds, investing in equipment and upgrading facilities supports kind of an overall environmental quality of life goal by providing better air quality and decreasing energy consumption within our facility. These two areas in the CIP account for approximately $18.3 million or 95% of our capital request. Excuse me. So vehicle rehabilitation starts on page 119. So over the next 5 years, we have programmed the replacement of 21 large buses and 2 dial-a-ride vehicles. One of the projects that we're really excited about is the purchase of additional battery electric buses. We have 2 battery electric buses scheduled to arrive this summer. We have 3 more programmed into the CIP in FY23, and then we have 1 programmed in 26 and in 27. That will bring our electric bus fleet to 7, really moving us towards that goal of sustainability. We will also be upgrading 2 40-foot buses to 2 articulated buses. So those are the 60-foot buses. And that would bring our articulated bus fleet to 10. It would allow us to operate the number 23 Orange Route exclusively with articulated buses, which will increase capacity on that route. And it'll also be able to operate at really no additional operating costs for us, because an articulated bus is equivalent to about a bus and a half. SIRI did submit a federal grant in November, and we haven't heard yet, but we submitted a federal grant for 3 more additional battery electric buses, besides the 7 I just spoke to, and 2 more articulated buses. So if awarded that grant, we would have more battery electric buses and articulated buses in our fleet, really lowering the financial commitment to the local funding partners. We are anticipating the cost of vehicles over the next 5 years in the bus replacement of vehicle to be $14.5 million, with 80% or more of funding comes from either state or federal grants. So if we move on to this next year, 22-23, we have programmed approximately $4 million in the CIP. SIRID's always been very successful at getting state and federal grants, which helps keep our system in that state of good repair, like I said, but it also lowers the financial commitment for our funding partners. In 23, we were able to use one-time CARES funding. We were able to transfer our federal funds to capital to support the purchase of the 3 battery electric buses that I just spoke of. These vehicles will reduce overall emissions of carbon dioxide by about 450,000 pounds each year. SIRID also received grant funding to replace 2 of our older 40-foot buses with newer vehicles that are less expensive to operate and significantly cleaner emissions. The new engines so for the buses they're replacing, the new engines will produce 90% less nitrous oxide and particulate matter than the buses that they're replacing. We will also be submitting, likely when it comes out, a 2022 Volkswagen settlement grant like we've done before. And if successful, the local funding share for the partners would be lower on these buses as well.
I have a question on the electric buses. So a big part of your maintenance budget goes towards these buses. Do we have any preliminary understanding about how maintenance varies with electric buses as opposed to the diesel buses?
So we hired a consultant. I need to look up their name because I never remember it. The Center for Transportation and Environment, CTE, to help us kind of develop a zero roadmaps admissions. And I know they've talked about that. James, I don't know if you can speak a little bit more to that.
I can't speak directly to the direct reduction of the direct cost until we actually have in our fleet, but there are fewer fluid changes and fewer parts to maintain than traditional diesel engines. So we expect the cost to be lower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think intuitively we heard from Corey when he talks about that it's less oil changes, things like that. So I think, but yeah, sorry. I can find out more information if you want.
No, I think just intuitively, we hope that you'll be able to realize some savings in your maintenance with electric buses.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
Barb, do you know offhand what the average age of the fleet is now?
I do have that. I don't know if I have it in this one. I have it in the budget. I know it. Oh, look at this. I have it. So for FY22, so 21, 22 that we're in right now. The average age is 12.5 years, and then next year it will increase to 13.6. And that's really because we received those 12 buses with stimulus money, the 12 Cybred buses. So they're aging and getting older.
Thank you.
In 23, Cyride did receive 80% grant funding to replace 2 Dial-A-Ride vehicles. So we have purchased a minibus and a minivan, and we leased that to HERDA to operate our Dial-A-Ride services. So they'll be replaced this year. Kind of supports the goal of connecting people to increase mobility and accessibility throughout the community. We'll also be replacing 1 support vehicle in 23. Currently, we have it being replaced as a hybrid, which is pictured here. We are looking at replacing a support vehicle with all-electric bus as funding and technology continues to advance. The next portion of the CIP is facility improvements and expansion, and that's on page 120. And this accounts for a little over $3.8 million of program capital over the next 5 years. We were fortunate to receive a state grant for a much-needed HVAC improvement at Cyride. So in 23, we'll be working on that. This will replace equipment that's 20 to 30 years old, and will keep our facility in that state of good repair as required by FTA, and it'll also improve the overall air quality within that portion of the facility. We have an interior facility improvements project planned in 23 as well. So the Cyride administration was built in 2008, and the first floor, has just general wear and tear from being used. So it's much like the project improvements you're doing here, where it'll be painting, carpet. We will be upgrading the light fixtures to all LED to help increase energy efficiency as well. If you remember, the Cyride facility was the first gold LEED certified building, so there are we'll try to keep true to all of that. So in 24, we have budget expanding our maintenance area. So a portion of this expansion would include upgrading the picture here, which is the welding and metalworking spaces at Cyride. So that would improve safety. So we'd be enclosing this, so it's a little bit safer area for people to operate in. And that of course would increase ventilation, air quality for the people using that. This project would also connect our mezzanine area in the shop so that we could store all parts and equipment in one area. Currently, equipment is stored throughout the facility, quite often where buses are parked. So having everything in a centralized location really will reduce the potential for accidents within the facility. We will pursue grant opportunities for this project. And then in 25, I know I've talked about this a little bit, but in 25, we have the spill-free fueling system program. So this will replace our current fueling system that was put in 2003. It will allow for quicker, more efficient fueling and less spillage, basically due to new designs and couplings. We've also programmed a gasoline fueling station. Cyride has transitioned its minibus fleet from diesel buses to all gas buses for emissions requirements. And so these vehicles are fueled off-site, creating operating costs. So we're looking at putting I didn't have a better name to call it, a gasoline fueling station, but James is afraid that you'll think we have like a Dunkin' Donuts and everything, but it'll just be a dispensary, a tank, and a small little area for them to fuel those vehicles. So, but we'll look at grant funding for both of these projects as well. That would be a state grant that we would look for.
Yeah, I was surprised to see that you have, it's almost $500,000 for gasoline, and was there, and obviously you have to have a tank, on site, and it'll be probably double walled for, for leakage and stuff. But it seemed like an awful lot of, money, and but I'm sure you did a cost benefit analysis. But.
Yeah, and we will do that. Typically what we do when we put things in the outline years like that, like 25, 26, 27, we put in $750,000 as a benchmark, because the PTIG, the public transit infrastructure grant that we can apply for, the maximum you can get is $600,000. So that allows us to request the maximum. If the project wasn't that amount, then obviously we would request the 80% of whatever it was.
What does the city fleet do for fueling?
We have a partnership with the DOT. We go over to their facility and we use card system and we fill up vehicles there. Pay their going rate. Works out very
Is that what you currently do?
I say
too?
maybe I could pay, the city could pay me the going rate. No. Come fuel in at our place. We go to Iowa State, and that's where we fuel at currently.
Yeah, I'll defer to the transit board. It just seems that to build a fueling station, a gasoline fueling station, where there's other opportunities, maybe with the DOT or other places. But
I think-
anyway, it's
And maybe James can speak a little bit more to it. I think really it's the time that it takes for our employees to run those vehicles there and have them fueled every night. We have 8 minibuses right now, so they're all there. You know, we have 1 or 2 people working, so they have to run that vehicle, and that takes a lot of time where they're not servicing our buses. Is there anything else? you wanna-
Yeah, mainly is an operational issue. At the end of the day, we have actually 15 vehicles, approximately 15 vehicles that take gasoline. So 15 minutes per trip, back and forth for an employee, it takes a substantial amount of time for employees to go back and forth every night, which leaves diesel buses idling, waiting to come into the garage and such. So
And then finally, in the 26-27, we do have the facility expansion program. So we have programmed $750,000 in the CIP as grant opportunities become available. Currently, SIRIDE has about $1.7 million in local match for facility improvements or an expansion if operations warrant.
I have a go ahead.
I was just going to ask if you know, Barb, how many of the buses are currently not undercover typically?
That's an excellent question because I feel like it changes all the time. James, would you say 12 probably? Probably 12 40-foot buses and then the new mini buses. So the new 6 minutes. So we have 8 mini buses parked outside plus our relief vehicles.
So Barb, as you think about expansion, are there opportunities to think about adding solar to the roof? I mean, you have huge electrical demands there. Is that ever been considered to add solar to that rooftop? It's a huge space.
And a flat roof, so it would probably be a likely candidate. And maybe James can speak more. I know as we move into the battery electric bus technology, well, this isn't exactly what you asked, as we kind of move into that technology, it hasn't advanced for buses as much as we had hoped. So what we're trying to do is figure out a way to be able to use the battery when it no longer fuels the bus, to put it to help fuel the building through solar panels and stuff like that. So, I mean, it's something we've talked about. We'd have to work with our A&E firm to see what kind of other opportunities there are.
So is that something that you need direction from the council to look at, or is that something that internally as a board, you have the authority to initiate that kind of analysis?
I think that, I mean, you have 2 good trustees here that obviously represent the board and I think can help us move forward with that. And we can look at that. That's not a problem.
Okay.
I mean, a nice flat roof. I mean, James, can you speak more to that? Have you looked much at that?
we haven't put pretty much design work into very thought, but it has crossed our mind in the past as well. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of flat real estate up there that we could possibly utilize. So, and it's part of that's part of speaking to, especially with the electric buses with the useful life of the batteries being 6, 8, maybe 10 years. I don't know, but that's just from an operational standpoint. There is maybe 60% of the initial battery capacity available still. Then when it's just not able to go on route, we could still use that to charge or to store energy during the day to discharge it again, to charge up the bus that came off route potentially. So it's something.
So I'm sort of interested in exploring this further. John, is that something that we just defer to transit, or can we ask for a motion to?
I think that
ask for a formal.
Bronwyn currently serves on transit, and
We could, I could bring that up at transit for you. For us.
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I think the math it works pretty quickly. These consultants are able to evaluate the amount of area and look at the amount of potential electricity that could be produced, and then it's just sort of a cost benefit analysis. So I think it could be done fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's an excellent suggestion.
We're sort of in a mode right now with climate action goals that we need to have it as a set of lenses on all these different buildings and all these different projects, the ways in which they can advance our goals. So, Bronwyn, you could carry the water for us. That'd be great.
Yeah, happy to.
James, did you say that the life of a battery for a bus is only 6 to 8 years long?
Yes.
Potentially, yeah. It's still unknown. It's still a fairly new technology. Technology's improving, but yes, 6 to 8 years is what we're expecting.
Is there a cost estimate on what it's going to cost to replace the batteries?
About $400,000 to $450,000
The price of a new
of a
diesel
new
bus?
40-foot diesel bus, yes.
Wow.
So then, I apologize, then that begs the question, do you build into your CIP the replacement of those batteries?
Right. And that is something we're going to bring up to the board once we get through the budget, is how do we want to manage that, especially as we look at bringing battery electric buses into the fleet. Technology keeps growing, keeps advancing. So that's why it is kind of stepped in a little bit, but it is a concern. And we're working with our federal lobbyists to help with this as well. Because as you who have been on the transit board know, I mean, we run buses 15, 20 years. And for a battery bus to only last 6 to 8 years, we would have to replace it quite a few times. So, well, it's great technology. It just needs to continue to advance.
Well, if I could stay on this for a moment. So you're getting 12 of these buses.
We're getting 7.
I'm sorry, 7.
Yeah.
Ideally, you could stagger these.
Mm-hmm.
So you'd replace maybe a battery a year or something, but that's not what we have here. You're going to be getting all 7 at once. So that should get Dwayne's wheels spinning here in terms of.
2 this year. So we're getting 2 this year that we got through a low-no grant. So we'll get 2 in 22. We have 3 scheduled in 23, and then the next 2 are in 26 and 27. So they're not really all at one time. It's just over the course of the 5-year CIP.
And so then do you create a sinking fund to plan for that maintenance?
Yeah, I mean, I believe the board will,
Well, the big,
not sinking, but like a depreciation fund. And I think we do have to think through, how do we replace the batteries? What could that look like? And I mean, technology continues to change really rapidly. So my hope is by the time we're doing some of these in 26, the batteries do have a longer useful life.
Sure.
It does have some of the changes. I mean, even, we were awarded the low-no grant in 2019, and because we wanted to lower the funding partners' request, amount they put into the buses, technology has advanced a lot since now in 22 when they're coming.
well, the major impact's going to come is that 80% of your bus fleet is paid for by federal grants, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if they're not going to pay for battery replacement, this is going to have a huge financial drag on the budget. Because
I'm glad you raised this.
So it's going to be, I'm sure you've already thought about it, but the point is that in the next few years, CIP may start showing planning in for buying batteries if the federal government's not going to fund it. And if they are, that means we're going to have to defer buying buses.
And we are working with our federal lobbyists and stuff. I mean, it's not just a SIRIDE problem. I mean, it really is
Right.
something that's seen by a lot of transit agencies. I mean, a lot of them are jumping in, buying, Des Moines got 9, things like that, where I think the board is very aware of it, and maybe we haven't explained it fully and spent all the time we need to, but the board has done a nice job of setting money aside for, which has changed a little bit since a couple of you were on the board, for kind of a bus replacement fund. So I think because we were able to use one-time, really timely federal funding, and we were able to save money because of class changes and academic changes in 20 and 21. The above 10% closing balance, that's required, the board directive of 7.5% to 10% is above the 10%. And I think they're thoughtfully using that money, being able to replace buses and to look at other infrastructure. So I think the board, I'm confident in the board's ability to kind of navigate this. I don't think, and Steve, you can speak, or Browan, you'll see something in the CIP that would shock any of you. I mean, I think we would have the funding for it.
Mm-hmm.
You could do a battery drive and everyone could kind of donate AAA batteries. Would that help?
I mean, it's just hopefully with the lobbying, our lobbyists will get them to understand that, maybe a battery electric bus needs a different funding cycle, or maybe you can help us replace the battery at a different level, opposed to the battery has to be replaced at 100% local cost, things like that. So that's really what and again, obviously I can't read the tea leaves of what's going to happen in the federal government, but it's not a problem exclusive to SIRIDE. I mean, a lot of transit systems have the same issue. And the Biden administration is very much into, going to sustainability. And, I know you guys are doing the climate action plan. FTA has what they're calling a Healthy Planet Challenge, which we're part of, which kind of dovetails nice with your climate action plan and how we're going to reduce emissions and things like that. So it's important, I think, on the FTA, Federal Transit Administrative level. So I do think there will be solutions coming to it. I just don't know them right now.
Great.
And
Thanks.
does that cost include disposal of the battery that's taken out too, or?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I don't know the whole cost of it. I just know that's the amount that they've said, and that they've said our federal lobbyists have talked about is that it's about $400,000 for a battery replacement. I assume that means the disposal as well, but I don't know that to be 100% accurate.
I do like the fact that you're considering what could be done with those batteries that are just below capacity. And I hope that there will be continued discussion of creative things that could be done with them, reuse for other purposes, resale for other purposes that could get some more life out of the batteries for something else.
Right.
Because one of my concerns about electric vehicles is always that we really haven't dealt with the battery disposal issue. And especially if it's a battery that's got so much capacity and life left, just not enough to drive that bus.
Right.
Seems like we could come up with something that would be a really good plan for reuse.
Yeah.
So I appreciate it.
And can you speak to whether or not in the facility plans, what impact is it going to have these electric buses? Are there any, do you have to plan for them to be in a particular area? And how are you taking that into
No,
consideration?
that's an excellent question. I can expand on that, or James, if you want to talk about the facility expansion that we're doing right now, we're going to be bringing to city council. Yeah, I mean, go ahead. You can come up and say you're on a mic. He's so quiet.
Andy's wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't help me. So currently we've kind of identified an area of our facility. It's our lanes 1 and 2 of our facility that will kind of be our electric bus parking space for that end of each night. We're actually going to be bringing hopefully a project, if it's approved by the transit board here, early February to your meeting for plan specifications to finalize some of the infrastructure construction that needs to implement these, which will involve putting a separate 480 volt transformer for the building that will supply the electric bus chargers, as well as switch gears and all the other components that go with that. So yeah, we've kind of identified an area that can where we've got the wall space to put charging dispensers, because if you've been in our facility, you know it's very tight. You drive through, so a pedestal that's a couple feet wide is tough to fit in some places. So this is an area that'll accommodate our first 12 buses. Should be a good start, I guess, multiple years down the road. So
Good.
Thank you.
Question.
So,
James says I'm not staying. I'm leaving. Okay, so transit technology improvement starts on page 121. And really, advancements in transit technology have grown significantly over the last 2 years. So SIRIDE's philosophy is really, we're just going to continue to support technology that preserves access for our current riders, helps to attract more riders, and then really helps improve overall system efficiencies. So what you have picture, so the new, as new ridership patterns kind of start to develop, we are going to be assessing the data from our recently installed automatic passenger counters so that we can really use, so the automatic passenger counters, the picture here, so the automatic passenger counters to the public is an app that allows passengers to see in real time how full a bus is before it arrives at the stop. So this is exactly what it would look like on, this one happens to be the My State app, but it tells you the capacity on that bus is 15%. But the good part for SIRIDE, so this is an excellent part for people using our system. Hopefully Rachel can attest to that, but we'll be able to use that same data to help identify travel patterns and ridership patterns, and then really gather information so that we can really take a thorough and thoughtful approach to where system improvements can happen. And then if we do any future planning, we'll have the data. So some of you who were involved in SIRIDE 2.0, you remember we had to have people hand go out and count every person boarding and deboarding the bus. This will allow us to get that data. And we've been looking at it, and it's helped, we've had some conversations with Public Works. It's helped them understand how busy a stop is, things like that. So it's not on every single bus yet. The articulated buses are the only buses that don't have this on it right now, and that's going to be done in February. There was a little delay because of COVID and getting all the parts and everything, as you've heard from lots of industries, I'm sure. So, and then we'll also be investing in infotainment bus monitors, which is pictured here on all of our newly purchased vehicles. So these monitors display the stops along the route, just like here. So this would be the number 25 gold route. This helps passengers who are new to our system, as well as passengers with disabilities. And honestly, I think it helps a lot of people kind of just orient you where you are on the bus. These same monitors will be used to display advertising materials, so it'll be another revenue source for SciRide as well. In addition to these, we also have maintenance software planned for 23. So the maintenance department uses very specialized software. So this software will allow them to track hours, inventory, and parts. So that's planned in 23. And then we also have an investment in demand response management software. And this is really to help us manage our existing and any future demand response services. So currently we have 2 on-demand services. So we have the Ease route, which serves the East Ames industrial area, so like Danfoss, Barilla. And then we also have Moonlight Express that operates Friday and Saturday nights when ISU is in session. Currently, to use these services, passengers have to call SciRide and schedule a bus. So by investing in the demand response software, we can really streamline and automate that process. And so we'll be able to use significantly less staff time, but it'll really improve the overall customer experience. We're looking at having software that has a passenger-facing app on it so that customers can schedule on their mobile devices, similar to current ride-hailing systems here in Ames. I think on-demand software can be used to help support expansion of this kind of flexible service in other areas of the community, particularly ones that aren't currently well served by our fixed route service. So I think having a scalable approach to this kind of software will help us be more flexible and adaptable, particularly as the community continues to grow and expand. We're hoping that this can help with that.
Barb, what sorts of vehicles are being used on those on-demand services?
Currently, we use minibuses for those because they don't really carry that many passengers. That's typically they're used on minibus. Moonlight Express, ridership has changed significantly on our Moonlight Express. It used to be, when I first started, it was all minibuses, hand scheduled door to door, like what I'm speaking here. Then we went to all fixed route services because we carried a lot of people, so basically more fixed route. And now we kind of use a combination of that. So the corridors where we know we're going to get a lot of people, because a minibus isn't going to be able to have the capacity that a large bus does. So it's kind of a combination on Moonlight Express. But I think what we've seen intuitively is people aren't using Moonlight Express as much as they used to.
Interesting, because my students are still saying we need more Moonlight Express service.
Okay, good. Yeah, I mean, our ridership's down on that. And yeah, that's good. That's interesting. That's good information for us to know, I think.
I can give you the report that they turned in last semester.
And then we have shop and office equipment on page 122. We've programmed each year the replacement of office equipment and shop equipment. The SciRide maintenance department owns several pieces of specialized software or equipment, really to kind of stay in compliance with those FTA regulations and keep our stuff in a state of good repair. I think the challenge for us is really predicting how much we're going to spend each year, because we have equipment in the building that's 40 years old and very reliable. But typically we spend between $45,000 and $50,000 a year in shop equipment. So when we try to figure out what shop equipment to replace every year, we really look based on needs. So if something needs to be replaced, and then if something doesn't need to be replaced, then we really look at overall safety in the area. So this is a picture of a piece of equipment that we're planning on replacing in 23. So this is our sandblasting equipment sitting out here in the wide open. So we'll be replacing this to reduce the amount of silicon dust in the air, improving the air quality in this area of the facility. And then the final section of the CIP is bus stop improvements, and that's on page 123. And we have put bus stop improvements on hold for FY23 because of Thyroid 2.0 and the pandemic. There has been a significant shift in our ridership patterns. So this next year, we plan to update our bus stop improvement plan, and we'll be using that automatic passenger counter data that I was talking about so that we can better understand where people are boarding and deboarding with the thought to really be able to upgrade and enhance stops for the most number of passengers. And that concludes the transit portion of the CIP. We appreciate your time, and we'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any other questions for Barb?
Good program.
Barb, do these technologies with the counters and all of that have the potential to help with the staffing situation with driver shortages?
Probably not.
Well, I don't know. I was just thinking.
Sorry, I'm just thinking that through. It's an interesting question. I mean, obviously, if you can figure out a way to match services to where demand is, you can better figure out exactly, maybe fine tune exactly where you need drivers, you know? So, yeah, I mean, it might help some. And the real struggle is just the labor shortage is so tight that, I mean, when we bring the budget, a prelude to the budget, I mean, our fixed route expenses have gone up a little over 3%, and it's really due to overtime and trying to recruit and retain enough people. I mean, it's a struggle, not obviously, as all of you know, not unique to us. I do think, though, once we train somebody to get a CDL, they're very valuable to other companies as well. So that can be a challenge.
Okay. Thanks, Barb.
Thank you, Barb.
Yes. Have a nice night.
Wow, those park pictures look wonderful.
There's no
Get out
snow
there.
on them.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Yeah, the pictures up there that you see, you got Ada Hayden with the new fishing pier, and then obviously the band shell when we did the Simon Estes concert and dedicated the lighting and electrical, and anybody that was there, I hope you liked the little comedy routine from Craig and I. The mayor did a nice job of following in tune and missed the ribbon to cut. So kind of some fun things. So just kind of go through our CIP. So we do have a 5-year total. I'll just mention is just over $39 million. And really, as we put our CIP together, we're always looking at, two things. How do we take care of what we have, make sure we're maintaining it and keeping it high quality. And then the second thing is adding fun, new, unique amenities to our parks and facilities. So that's what we try to do, and you'll see a combination of things. So with the next slide, a year in review, just to show you a short video of some of the things that we accomplished in the last 12 months. So obviously there's a lot that goes into all those projects, and we can't thank you enough. The commission, the council, for being so supportive of what we do and providing the funds to do what you just saw in that little minute video. So with the downtown plaza, we've been trying to keep you aware of what's been going on with this. We're hoping to bring plans and specs before City Council on February 8th. And if you look at the next slide, it just kind of gives you a breakdown of, the funding, where it's coming, what's being spent in each of the different years. One thing that you'll notice, I'll just make a quick note, is that in November, we brought forward a cost. It was $4.35 million. Now it's, just over $4.5 million, so about $180,000 more than what we showed you in November. Just wanted to point that out. When we bring the plans and specs on February 8th, we'll give you more details in regards to what has caused that increase. But that is the current funding that we're looking for to finish off this project. Next one, Indoor Aquatic Center. Just shows you some of the conceptual drawings. Obviously, the floor plan on the right will be expanded to the right with some of those second floor amenities being put on the first floor, multi-purpose space, walking track, and so on. On the next slide, what we did is just really wanted to show you just kind of a breakdown of what's being spent, when we're thinking it's going to be spent. Combination you can see with some design, some construction manager, when we're going to purchase the land, when that money is going to be spent, and really just try to break it down for you. And right now we have a total cost of the project of $30,186,000. Just an update on a couple of things. Next Tuesday, we'll be bringing RFP for construction management firm that will come before you, and we'll get that out to bid. One of the things that we're also doing is working with RDG, to negotiate that contract. And hopefully what we'll do is we'll bring that contract and the construction management firm contract, hopefully at the same time, and bring that to you. Probably be late March by the time we get that all done. Right now we are doing an environmental study and hazard material identification. We did contract with Impact 7G, and they are going to be going to the DOT properties on Thursday and Friday, doing their study, and then we'll get a report back, and we'll share that with council, and let you know if we need to do a phase 2 environmental study as well. And then the last thing is we've been in communication with the DOT and continuing to talk about the purchase agreement and what might be entailed in that. One thing I don't think we've shared with council yet is they have agreed to be off of the property by October 1st of this year. So once we get going with design and so on, we could put a bid package out for demolition maybe late this fall and get that done so we can then start with construction next spring. So just an update on some of the things with the Aquatic Center. We move on to park system improvements. Just
Keith,
touch on.
Keith, I had a quick question on the source of money. The Winokur donation is shown at 1.3. I thought that was 2 million that was available. Has that been changed?
Okay. So go forward a couple slides. That one. All right. So say that one more time.
On page 131 for financing, it shows a Winokur donation fund at 1.294 million. And for some reason, I had in my mind that there was $2 million in that fund, but maybe that
there is. So what you're seeing with the Indoor Aquatic Center for donations. So there is money that is going to be spent in this current year, fiscal year 21-22. So because we're not issuing bonds and all the other stuff, so some of it would be spent. It just doesn't show here.
So that's the 705, which is this fiscal year. That's coming out of the Winokur fund.
Correct.
Got it.
Yep. So one project that we did add in, this year, it's a new project or for 22-23, just over $100,000, is doing some renovations out at our Gateway Park Administration Building. And one of the reasons for it, we are going to, and we'll talk more about this at budget time, but we are going to be discontinuing our Small Wonders program. We've had one retirement so far, another retirement with our staff, and we just felt it was a good time to stop that program. So we're going to be, the picture on the left is our Small Wonders room. We'll be doing some things in there to be able to take some of the programs or all of the programs that we have in the multi-purpose room that overlooks the gym on the second floor. Take those programs, move them out to our building, and that will free up the multi-purpose room for cubicles, city offices, conference room, and so on. We'll still keep the aerobics room, that will still be up here, but we'll do some renovations. That's a women's restroom, just a picture of it, not ADA compliant. So we have 2 restrooms out there, male and a female. What we're thinking we're going to do is renovate them into just gender neutral restrooms. And then we are going to probably do some rearranging, some different things out in our office space, maybe add some other workstations and so on there as well. So the next project, at Carr Park, and these are just some conceptual drawings, some pictures of some restroom / shelter combinations. But this is something that we'll be doing in 23-24. There's $350,000. We're actually looking to take the bathhouse down this winter. And then obviously we've talked about with the agility course that will be going in, this hopefully late this spring. And then this will go in a couple years later. Just one thing you saw in the picture, the next slide. You saw in our year in review, again, working with water to make this happen. And it is popular. Every time I go down there, there's always somebody there, people using it. And we will be adding, some different parking and a shelter. And really what we're going to do is, if you kind of look at it right now, you see the kind of the usable space close to the water, and then you have parking, and then you have shelter, and then you have playground, which really isn't shown on the bottom of that picture. And what we want to do is we really want to reverse that. So the playground and the shelter will be to the north of the parking lot, so kids and people don't have to go through the parking lot, to get to the water. So that's something, and we do have playground equipment in the playground page as well. So then the last thing on page 132, just wanted to highlight is we do have 2 canoe kayak launches. One in North River Valley. You can see where the improvements are to the right on that left picture, where the canoe kayak launch. We just want to do some improvements, maybe even do a better drop off for individuals to get into that area, drop off their canoe and kayak. And then on South 16th, you can see where it says river access. That's kind of how people get down to the river. There is a part of the Skunk River Water Trail. There was some work that Mimi Wagner did with a group of people several years ago. And one of the things is we do have some designs for each of those as to what it should look like, what's the angle of the approach, the concrete and everything to the water. So we'll be using some of that information to make improvements to both of those accesses. So if you go to page 133 with Ada Hayden, we do have wetland overlook, which is that's the North Lake, the west side of the North Lake. We've been working with the Friends of Ada Hayden, and they actually are looking to maybe fund the design of this project, and then maybe even help raise funds or contribute funds to the actual construction of the overlook. The other thing that we're looking at is what we call Jensen's Pond, which is the north side of the park, up off of the Upland Trail, kind of between the Upland Trail and Quarry Estates to the north. But it's a smaller pond, and one of the things that we're looking at is really do a renovation of that, maybe right off of the Upland Trail, do a little pier or some kind of a dock that goes out. Work with the DNR to stock fish in there. We'll probably add some solar powered aeration. And one of the things that we do is we do have a beaver that likes to clog the outlet. So we will be doing a different outlet structure so the beavers can't block that. But we really think it would be a great place for parents, grandparents to take kids, grandkids, there and do some fishing. So that's one thing. The next one on page 130 through just just wanted to highlight is replacement of both trails on the north and the south lake. And with this, we'd be looking at going from asphalt to concrete. Concrete's going to be a lot more stable. If you've ever been up there, those edges just keep crumbling with the asphalt. And we did some overlays a couple years ago, and it's already in some spots failing. And then we also want to go from a 10-foot width to a 12-foot width. And then what we'll probably do is do some striping, down the middle and do some other type of safety, protocol to really kind of make it safer. And one thing that we may do in the meantime is looking at possibly putting up some speed limit signs because there are people that go out there right now and they use it as a training exercise with their bicycles, and it's just not safe. But that's something. And in each of those years, we're using geo bonds of $700,000 for those projects, and hopefully that will be enough money.
So Tim, I think you raised a question and concern about safety up there at Ada Hayden. Does this address the concerns that you had?
Certainly. I mean, this has been a tremendously popular area for our community. And so with that popularity, we just haven't tried to manage the traffic. And so you've got people who are on two wheels and people that are walking and running and everything in between. So, I mean, if we could go at some point to a biking trail and a walking running trail, I don't know if there's space for all that. But
yeah, in some spots there would not be enough room.
Right.
And to be able to do that. I know we have been looking at other places, and some of them, do what you just described. Some of them just put line down the middle, and then really have different things. Some people, what they do is wheeled movement is on the outside lane, and walking is on the inside lane. And now you do have people crossing, going in different directions, but that's one thing that people have done. So we'll continue to look at see what the others are doing and what's successful, what's not successful when we do this. But to go with two separate lanes, I think it'd be tough in a lot of places.
you see that like up in the Twin Cities, some of the larger lakes they have there. But seriously, going from 10 to 12 would be an amazing improvement.
Yeah,
It's amazing what this 2 extra feet will do. give you options for striping that.
right.
We're going to put in like wildlife fencing at the airport. Maybe just put wildlife fencing down the middle of the all the way around.
There you go. That must be some fence that they're putting in out there. So one of the things, we have on page 134, just over $1 million for playground replacements, new installations, and really with it, what we do is we generally get about 20 years of life out of our playgrounds. Some get replaced a little earlier, some a little bit later. But one of the things that we're looking at is in 26, 27 at Moore Memorial Park, we have 2 playgrounds up there, and they'll both be up for replacement. And we have 250,000. Now, generally, we might be at about 40 to 50 to 60, depending on what it is. But we're really looking at it, and because of the topography out at Moore Memorial, we do have some hills and so on. So really what we're wanting to do is put some play equipment at the top of the hill, incorporate the hill, do maybe a slide, climbing apparatus, some other types of things, and then have some play equipment down at the bottom as well. So again, just trying to do something different, unique, and so on. And we really think Moore Memorial lends itself to be able to do that. And I know, Gloria, you have asked in the past about some of the different adding some inclusive types of apparatus or pieces of equipment. So if you look at this picture, in the back, you see those kids on that swing. That's the Oodle swing, which is what we have at the Barnes Family Inclusive Playground over at Innis Grove. And then that house is something similar to what we have there as well. So I think with some of these things, it really lends itself to add some of those standalone pieces that no matter your ability, you'll be able to participate or to use. If we go to Furman Aquatic Center, that's on page 135. Just a couple of things. Painting the pool basins, we wind up initially we're thinking we could maybe get by every 7 or 8 years. Now we're looking at probably every 6 to 7 years, just with having to repaint those. And this is up in 22, 23 to repaint them, about $150,000 to do all 3 basins. So we'll do that right after the season, this next summer. The thing on the right, and I'd ask if anybody knows what they are, and Mayor, you can't answer.
Okay.
So those are water heaters, and we have about 20 of them, and they're up for replacement as well. So those are going to be done in 22, 23, and we have $75,000 to replace those.
Keith, can you close the loop on the water leak that you had, and has that been resolved? And is there any need for any kind of money put aside for additional repairs, or that just comes out of operating budget?
Yeah. So with the leak, we did identify where the leak was, and there were some other things that we took care of that we found also, and those have already been taken care of. And we fixed a number of leapers and some other things that we found. But it is, if you look at that picture on the left, and you see those 3 kind of racing stripes in the middle of the lazy river, down towards the end or on the north side or the top end, there's a drain. Yep, there's a drain just a little bit further south to your right. But anyways, it's on the concrete on the top. So what it is that water drains from that surface down into the lazy river, and then it goes back to the pits. So they had kind of a concrete lined pipe, and that concrete crumbled. So what we're going to do is the company's going to go in and actually line that, clean it out, and then line it. So we have one quote. We were going to be meeting with another company just to see if the first quote that we had was reasonable or not. So that work will be done probably as soon as the snow is gone. We'll be done, and we'll be ready to go for the summer. Okay. So I didn't put any slides for page 136, so we'll jump to 137 at Homewood. We do have replacing the bridge on hole number 9. In 23-24, we have $60,000 for design, and then 24-25, $250,000 for replacing the bridge. So that's the biggest project on that page. We go to the ice arena. Kind of in this that area that you see, you can see that door in the left picture. You had on the left side, you have the elevator going up to the balcony, and then that door that's open that goes to the locker rooms. But in between that area, what we're going to be doing is going to be adding a women's change room. More and more women are playing hockey, and a lot of times when we have games on Saturdays, we have 4 public locker rooms. 2 of them are being used for one game, and then while they're finishing playing, the next 2 teams are coming in using the other 2, and it's not always possible to give the girls and ladies a place to change. So that's what we're going to be doing with this project here.
Is that just give me a changing room, or is there going to be toilet facilities in there and a shower like the other one?
It will have all of that. Yep. So if we go to Moore Memorial Park, just a couple things here. You know, we've been having this one kind of hang out in always year 5, and now we actually have moved it up, so it's in year 4, $350,000. And really, if you look at that picture on the left, you can see just kind of below the red line, right in there, there's the old maintenance shop for Vinker Golf Course, and they still use that area. But there is a kind of a low head dam. They call it a hydro jump. There's a lot of different names. You can kind of see just a little white spot in the river right there. But that's where we think is the best place to put the bridge. And through conversations with the university, we're at a point right now where we think we have pretty much just about all of the details worked out. We're going to meet again in late spring, early summer, just to make sure that we got everything worked out. And then we'll start putting some documents together to get a lease for the to be able to do the bridge and whatever we need to do on the university property. And then we'll come back up onto city property and get over to Shoal Road. So one of the things that we really haven't shared with council, we may have, but that whole area west of Iowa Creek, that whole area is actually, we did a project with water. We had hired ISG, and they came and did a study on that area. And we are going to be this next summer, we're going to be planting that all into prairie. And then eventually we'll have some stream bank stabilization that we'll have to do. It'll be kind of a phased approach. We'll do some educational signage and interpretive signage, and we're looking at just probably mowing a path through the prairie and so on. But eventually with the bridge, you know, that path will go all the way up to Shoal Road and then up to Applied Sciences and so on. Now, I don't know if John pointed it out in their shared use path page, but they also, to coincide with what we're doing, so we have $75,000 in 24-25 for design of the bridge. They also, in their shared use path page program, they have I think $25,000 for design to make the connection from the Moore Memorial Trail down to the bridge. And then the next year when we construct the bridge, they have $100,000 in their program to pave the trail from Moore Memorial down to the bridge. Initially, then what we'll do is we'll just do, again, kind of a mowed path all the way up to Shoal Road. And we're still working with Public Works to program in the rest of the trail to hook up to Shoal Road up by Applied Sciences. So we are working with them to make this happen. And then Tim, you had this comment last year, and it does, like I said, it does look like we're moving forward, and we'll be able to make this happen.
Well, it's very exciting. Could I ask, have there been discussions with Iowa State about doing some programming for Reactor Woods and Peggy's Trail?
We did have Sarah Katie, our Parks and Recreation Commission chair, and we did meet with Dwayne Reeves from the university, who's kind of responsible for Vinker and with some of the other properties that they have. And we did have some conversation about, you know, do we do something together? Is there something that we can do with this area? And one of the things that I told them is, right now, you know, we just don't have the resources to go in and to maintain all of those trails through there. And there's going to be some work that's needed. And we both agreed that, you know, once we come in and say, all right, we're going to start maintaining these, then the expectations, generally what happens is they go up, and then when the oh, this is eroded or that's not right, then, hey, when are you going to fix it? And so on. So at this point, we said right now, we just don't have the resources. And ISU really doesn't have the resources to maintain that area as well. Now, one of the things, and Steve and I have talked about this, and I told ISU, I said, now in the future, say 5 years from now, 10 years from now, sometime in the future, whatever that time frame may be, is if the university, and it sounds like they're getting closer to stop farming their part of that lower area. And at some point, there was a decision to say, hey, could we make this whole area, wrap Reactor Woods into it, kind of tie it into Moore Memorial Park, and have one large park in the middle of the community? I think, yeah, definitely. Let's have that conversation. Steve and I just didn't think right now is the right time for that, with some of the other projects, obviously, that we have going on as well.
So we could take all night talking about this. How many acres is Reactor Woods?
I want to say it's, for some reason, I think if you take all of that wrapped, Reactor Woods and some of the other property, I want to say it's about 100 acres.
Yeah.
So it's a huge area.
So adding the access to Reactor Woods is a huge deal. But once people have a chance to go there, it's going to open up. So I would suggest that the vast majority of people in Ames have never been to Reactor Woods.
I would agree with you.
It's an absolutely underutilized, beautiful park. And so if we're going to invite our community to explore that, I think we should at least create some minimum standards, because some of the trails there, they just need a little maintenance. But I'm concerned about just from a safety perspective. We can talk about adding additional improvements down the road, but just from a safety perspective, I would want your crew to evaluate that, put a fresh set of eyes on that for at least a minimum safety.
But if the city doesn't own that though, right?
So, I mean, this is the interesting thing. I mean, we're going to be partnering, we're going to build a bridge, and in essence, inviting people to this.
Right.
I think we should make sure that it's safe.
Well, I'm just thinking about the fact of, just that's a lot of maintenance in terms of taking your brush machine through there to try and increase visibility, but we're doing work on someone else's property. I'm not saying this is a great long-term vision. I'm just
Our
thinking,
emphasis is to connect up to Ontario and get into the bike path system there. That's where we're trying to direct up to, not through the woods.
Well, aren't people going to be accessing, maybe I'm misunderstanding your map, but aren't people going to be connecting with Reactor Woods there too?
Well, I can't stop them from going.
Is there a pointer?
We can't stop them from going over there, but we're gonna build a trail eventually that goes right up to Ontario.
To your left there.
Yeah, I mean, Brookside isn't our land, right? We have a long-term lease with that. So,
So just so really what we're looking at doing is the bridge will cross over right here.
right.
And then we're looking to get through up to this area, which will be planted in prairie, and we'll mow maybe right along the power lines. And then the goal is to kind of follow this path, okay, through the prairie, and then get to Shoal Road, and then up through Shoal Road to Applied Science. So that's kind of the route that we are looking at, not going through Reactor Woods. We'll go on the edge of it, and then when we come up along Shoal Road, you'll be kind of splitting, the east and the west side of Reactor Woods.
But there are trail accesses all along that area. People access the trail.
Right.
So when we run through there, we cross along Vinker. There's a point of access you can cross into Reactor Woods. But if you add that trail there, there's going to be a whole lot more people discovering for the first time this beautiful resource here. So, I mean, it's not something we're going to solve tonight, but I just want you to think. I think we should think about the minimum safety.
Yeah, and we can have that conversation.
Yeah.
Like I said, we're meeting with the university, and the one thing I really will encourage when we're meeting is the university to see what they can do, to help with this, because sometimes it's always just looking to us to solve some of the problems. So if it's a cooperative effort, we'll see what they say about that. But there's some steep areas. You've been back there, and there's some bridges that cross some of the creeks, kind of homemade, types of things. So we can have the conversation and see.
Yeah.
Don't know if we'd go that route, but we can have the conversation.
Great, thanks.
Yep. So, and then just the last one with Hayden's Preserve on page 140. Again, this is I'm going to start the development, but you can kind of see that kind of that lime green area in the lower left area, yep, right there. So that's about a 9-acre parcel, that Hayden's Preserve is giving to the city for park development. And again, one of the things that we're looking at with this park, 9 acres, we're not looking to develop this or have 9 acres of developed area. We really want to see how can we have some developed area, how can we have maybe some natural area, maybe there's some gardens, maybe there's some other types of things that we can do out there. So I think it's a real opportunity, and I know we generally put about 80,000, or City Council gives us 80,000 for a new park development. We have 200,000, in here because we do want to do some different types of things. So I think it's a real good opportunity for us to develop a park on the north side of Ames. So
Can you give me some perspective on how large that park parcel is compared to other parks in the system?
Yeah. So if you just for example, Roosevelt Park, okay, that one, that's about 1.2 acres. So trying to think, one that's close, Lloyd Kurtz. All right, Lloyd Kurtz is just about 4 acres. Okay, Hira, Tahira and Lob Hira Park, that's just under 6 acres. So it's almost, you're almost taking Tahira and Lob Hira Park, adding Lloyd Kurtz to it, and that will get you just a little bit more than what this will be, if that helps you.
Yeah, that helps a lot. Thank you.
Yep. Okay. So with that, with the Parks and Recreation section, any questions? Any other questions for that?
Can you just comment on, I think schedule, we talked about this, is that you're going to have a parks master plan or a long range study? Is that right? Is that coming down the pipe that kind of ties in with?
Yep. So we have discussed that, and we've talked about, right after the comprehensive plan was adopted, that we would go out and do a park master plan. One of the things right now is what we're looking at probably holding off for a couple of years, before we do it. Just again, because we have some of these other really big projects, and which is going to take a lot of our staff time. So once we, in the meantime, what we're going to be doing, and part of our national association, National Recreation Park Association, I know there's just a thread through, they call it NRPA Connect, just in regards to master plans. So what we're going to be doing in the meantime is just starting to collect, some of the different master plans that people are doing. When we go to our state association, actually in February, our state association is doing a directors forum. So that may be a conversation they'll have with other directors. Hey, when did you do yours? What did you do? All those types of things. So we're just going to hold off because it's going to take a lot of our time. There's going to be a lot of public input to do it, because what we really want to do is hey, where are we? What are we lacking? And even with all the parks that we have, the 38, soon to be 39, and maybe 40, and maybe 41. as we move through things is what should our existing parks? How should we change them? Are there things that we should do differently? Are there opportunities? More and more. Not every park is fully developed. How can we add some of those natural areas, and how can we help the environment by maybe doing some different things within the park? So that's kind of the time frame for that, Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
So, well, the last thing though is, which most of you know, maybe some of you don't, we're also responsible for the right of way and the cemetery. So the right of way, we don't have any projects there, but for the cemetery, we do have Ontario Cemetery, and we do have money. If you've gone by there, that picture on the right, there is a shared use path, there is a retaining wall, and then between that retaining wall and that fence, we just really need to spruce that up. It needs some new landscaping. It needs something. It's just not. We want it to look good when people go by. So that's something that's going to be happening here in this coming year, and then in 22-23, and then later on, it is in 25-26. Then what we want to do is, instead of that chain link fence that's around Ontario Cemetery, the picture on the left is the fencing that we have at Municipal Cemetery. We want to kind of do that same thing, and again, just make it look a lot nicer than what it is. So, and then just the last slide. If there are any questions regarding the cemetery, and this is something. We did move the one columbarium, added 2 new columbariums, and we're going to be doing the pavilion and so on. Those are projects that are going to be finishing up here. So any questions about the cemetery?
I don't think so.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks again for everything, the support that you give us, the funding, ability to do what we do. It's very much appreciated, obviously, from the residents, from staff, and thank you.
Thanks, Keith.
Have a good night.
You too.
Now you can talk to Steve.
Thanks, Keith. This is the fun part. So I'll move quickly. The remainder of the projects you see here are, I'll go through very quickly. You've seen them before. Not much changes. We have on page 142, we have our fire apparatus replacement program. This year we're going to replace a ladder truck, and refurbish the old one, T2. This plan calls for us replacing 2 of our frontline engines, and then we'll refurbish one of the ones we take offline to keep as a backup. So we always have 1 backup, 1 for a fuel or engine, and 2 frontline ones. We try to keep these at least 15 years or so, and the department does an excellent job. We've kept these a little bit longer than that. So really, many times we have to replace them, not because they're in poor conditions, because there's no longer have any parts for replacement. That's what forces us to take action. You'll see in this case, these are very large vehicles, and as you know, we do not try to depreciate those. The impact on the budget would be very great. So we use general obligation bonds to purchase these vehicles when needed, and they are essential corporate purpose, so they can be again issued without vote of the people. Library on 147, same project you've seen before. That's replacing the carpet. It's a major undertaking. We're going to be doing it here in the next 6 months to 9 months. Library had that built in. All we've done now is I think they've looked at it and they've said that they could that carpet could last for 2 more years, so it's just a delay in the project. I appreciate that department's not spending the money, or actually going through the stress of moving and rehabilitating the carpets when they don't need to. So that's really just a delay. That's been there before. Same thing with your campus town, your downtown, your neighborhood improvement program. Those are part of status quo. We continue those projects, right? You've seen those before. And then the last one on page 153 is our City Hall improvements. I think I just want to point out on 153, the cost of those have gone up. So for many, many years, we only budgeted about $50,000 a year. We pumped that up to $25,000 a year in the future. Okay. Now, that was kind of a highlighted overview. I want to bring you back to page 1 and 2 and 3. They're kind of good highlights for you.
Steve,
But
Steve, on the City Hall, is there any update on the HVAC for the auditorium and also on the security system, how we're doing on those? Is that
security system, we're just checking out today. That's almost going to be in place next week or two. We're getting the cards. We'll distribute those to you all too, and we'll have those working. They're testing it out now. Oh. Why don't you come here?
Yeah, so,
Sorry.
yeah, in a couple of weeks, I don't have a video or PowerPoint, but no, in a couple of weeks, we expect the security system to be up and running. We'll be working through kinks, doing training on software. We'll have several departments involved, kind of in special events, Parks and Rec, things like that. We'll have to get trained. But in a couple of weeks, you should see your cards. So this door here will be locked all the time. So if you don't bring your card, if you forget it, you'll have to come in this way. So that is going really well. We had some hiccups with supply chain issues, but those have finally come to pass.
Are they doing surfacing on the panic devices? I noticed a lot of dogs, they call them a dog, that goes into to latch the doors, just don't really latch real well. Is that something that they're working on as part of the project then?
No, so we did a change order since we had saved funding. So we went to transfer hinges on all the doors that are hardwired. So you don't see the wires. All the exterior doors and double doors are done now. We don't have that wire loop that you see in a lot of places. So luckily we saved some funding. We have those. Most of the doors you see in offices are wireless. So when you see the back, the big black part on the back, like you see on those, that's just batteries. So those are all wireless. So that saved us quite a bit of funding.
Hey, the bus batteries could be used for that.
And then the auditorium HVAC, Steve had put in his budget request to use some of the COVID relief funding to cover that shortfall. So we'd bring that back in March to rebid that with construction.
I'll show you the list again to remind you who held out. Remember that $14 million, 11 was going to go for the 2040 plan, but I held out, remember, $850,000 for actually the indoor aquatic center. The 450 we moved into the plaza, and 200,000 for the HVAC and auditorium. Remember that? So I'll show you that again, but yeah, we'll plan to rebid that with those monies. Any question on facilities? We are going to entertain a big project. We're going to go through recarpeting, repainting this building, and it will take months as we move people out. We might have to temporarily locate them. Each section of each office will have to move out of their space for maybe, I don't want to tell you, but it's 4 weeks or so in the conference rooms, maybe over to Parks and Recreation, maybe over the water treatment plant, and displace people for a while. Something you don't want to do but every 10 years or so, but it's time to do that for this carpeting. So Corey's going to lead this, head this up. He's got a team of members of the organization here in this building. They're going to put together a logistics plan, and we'll be able to implement that as soon as possible. But it's a long time coming. It'll disrupt things, but it's something you have to do. Got to reinvest in our buildings. We're trying to do that all over.
Yeah. And if you've noticed, John Forth, our building maintenance person, has been getting ahead of the project and removing all the wallpaper. So that's what you see in a lot of places.
It's kind of amazing that wall covering was installed in 1990 and it's held up pretty well. We really haven't made any major renovations in this building or investments other than carpeting once.
I find it interesting that the library, which has only been around since 2014, is already getting recarpeted, and this building has gone for so many years.
Yeah. And I want to emphasize again, where you see the gymnastics, youth gymnastics, we're moving it out. We're not going to put offices in there, but we're going to make it a nice space, probably with cubicles and a conference room in there. So we've got a lot of extra positions that we're going to be hiring and have hired. We need a home for those people. We're running out of space. So it's a different kind of approach, but that's how we're going to have to handle it until we're totally busting at the seams. We have to think about other places, which I don't want to think about because we moved to this building, consolidate all the remote locations we had. I don't want to start doing that again. So we'll see though. We'll keep working on that. All right. Any other questions on city facilities? Okay, sorry. I didn't hear you. Someone else right there?
No.
Page 5. I want you to look at page 5. Those 1 to 6 are kind of good summary pages, but I want to point out page 5 at the top of the page. There is an art, believe it or not, we try to do with this particular document, and I try to level as much as possible I can expenditures. Leveling is very important so we can afford the debt service that goes along with issuing bonds, because those bonds have to pay principal and interest payments, which show up in your debt service levy, are also just raising rates for our utilities to cover these costs. In this case, you'll see bonds. You see, I try to keep between maybe $12-13 million for the essential corporate purpose bonds. Predominantly, that's geared towards the number one priority for our citizens and our citizen satisfaction survey. That's traffic and street improvements, which we can do essential corporate purpose bonds. Actually, that's grown over the years. It started out about 8 million, and we've got up to about average of 12. Now you'll see in 22, 23, and 23, 24, we've got a big blip there. And that's because that's the Indoor Aquatic Center. Remember issuing about 4.1 the first year, 16 the next year, almost double in the next year. And we always tell people this is what it's going to cost for the Aquatic Center. But I think they only hear that amount and they don't realize we also have our increases in our budget just to handle the normal increase, the normal bond issue, right? The normal increase in police and fire. So in those years, you're going to have a major impact in your property taxes unless we have some strategies. And I will have some strategies for you. First of all, we don't account for or predict or estimate any of the reinvestment money coming back to help us offset this. Excuse me. But more than that, I think this year you're going to see in a couple of weeks, I'm going to put away some money, ask you to put away some money. We have some excess revenues in the current year like we normally do through savings from vacancies. I want to be able to transfer into our debt service fund. That will help us absorb those big increases in the first couple of years. Wayne's going to show us a strategy how we can do that. So we're going to try to mitigate that as much as possible for our customers. I know they hear what they say, but they don't understand how it compounds when you layer these two debts. You'll notice the other debt is state revolving loan fund money. So we entered some agreements. We got remember there's low interest loans we get from the state for some of the water and sewer projects? That's still a debt out there. So you'll see what our debt's issuance over the years. We try to level that as much as possible. Now, what I'm trying to point out is we don't have any revenue debt built into this. So I can anticipate when we get our sustainability program back and you want to make some major improvements. It could be our resource recovery plant at millions of dollars, $100 million or whatever. You're going to have to issue revenue bonds for that. It's going to have to be paid off by the users. User revenue, not from property tax, guaranteed property tax. I haven't done that yet because I don't know what it is. When we get that sustainability report back, I remember talking to people from Iowa City. It took them months to come up with a implementation plan, how to get there, the strategy to get there, the steps to get there. And we'll have to do that too, and we'll have to show the financing of it, right? And the impact on all the different rates. It could be resource recovery rates, could be water rates, sewer rates, electric rates. We yet to do that. Now, interesting, you've always asked me, I've also put in my budget message, which I'm sure you've read, because that's always a very popular reading for you all. And I told you the projects that haven't been included in there, but I think is needed in our capital improvements plan. The good part is we have crossed one off. We used to have 4. We are now working on our indoor aquatic center. I hate to put those projects in there before we have a commitment or understanding, because if I layered those in there, I would probably cut back something else so I could have that level debt. And then later on, I find you don't want to do it. I wouldn't want to cut those cuts. So I wait till we're really ready to go, and I show you how to make that work. But we still have 3 more projects that at least I know are before us. The relocation of fire station number 2. Remember, we're working with the university to see if we can find a spot along South State Street that'll actually improve our overall response in the city. Ultimately, as we continue to grow out, we're going to need a 4th fire station. We're trying to locate that, and that'll take some time to need. But also, I'm trying to build up the workforce. As you remember, adding firefighters now over a period of time. So when you open that 4th station, you have to have that fully staffed to operate. That's a big chunk of operating money in addition to your debt service. When we move Station 2, we have no increased personnel costs, right? Our apparatus costs. We're just going to move everybody over. When you open up 4, you're going to have additional personnel costs, the debt service on the building, and also additional apparatus. So that's off into the future. We got to plan for. We also have an outdated animal control center. You know, Ron Edwards does a great job down there. He makes that thing work, but we're going to have to come up with a way to handle that, finance that. That probably will need a vote. We're looking to see how other cities have financed it. A lot of other cities have used predominantly donations to help finance it, with the city putting a minor or some kind of contribution to match, if you know what I'm saying. So we're going to have to deal with that. The last one, the mayor and I always talk about too, I know he agrees with you on this, sometime in the future, we're going to need a new indoor recreation facility. Now that would be for things like basketball courts, indoor soccer fields, things like that. Not to the high level of a $52 million project, you understand? We hope we can be more cost effective, but we're going to need this in the community. That's not on the list yet. We've got a lot of projects to go. We certainly want to get the indoor aquatic center done first, right? So that's our vision for the next 5 years. The impact on the utility rates and property taxes will be shown to you in a couple of weeks when we unveil the budget, operating budget, okay? Now, remember, we're not asking you to make any decisions tonight. In a week, we're going to ask public input, some response to this document. We may have left out something. Some people might not want it. One of the items in there. You're just going to get input next week, too. Your final decision regarding the CIP, the capital improvements plan, is really on February 8th. You'll approve that at the same time you approve the operating budget. The reason that's important is it's a plan, right? Everything in the second and the fourth year may change over the years. But that first year, that fiscal year 2020, 22-23, when you approve that, that becomes part of your budget, your FY 22-23 budget. We're committed to that. So we'll probably have to approve that first. Right after that, you'll approve the operating budget on February 8th. So there's still time, even if people aren't available to give you input next week. That's fine. There's still time for them to write to council and give input on the capital improvements plan. Again, if you have any ideas about changing this and big projects, I wish you'd come to me first, because I don't want to find out on February 8th you want to put in a $10 million project. That'll cause us to make some major changes in our strategy, our financing strategy. All right? Make sense? The only last thing I want to go over, and all council members know this, I want to need to understand most of all, because it's new to her, is on Roman numeral, what is it, 5 or 4?
7.
7. Look on 7. It's our debt capacity, a state mandated capacity debt limit. So I'm not waiting to go over that. It's Roman numeral 7.
Yes. And I'll go over this briefly. And as Steve mentioned, if anybody's watching, there's a lot of good summary information in the front, but there's one page on here, and that's Roman numeral 7. That is a page where we demonstrate compliance, not only with state code, but also a council adopted policy, and that's on debt limit. So the code lays out what debt is subject to this limit, and essentially it's anything that you're committing property taxes on, whether that be TIF or general obligation bonds. And we lay out, the rule is, or the state code is 5% of assessed actual value. It's not the taxable value that moves around a lot with rollbacks and things like that, but the assessed value. And then the council further limits that by 25% of that capacity. So you're holding back an additional amount of money so you can make sure you can do things such as an aquatic center or other things that Steve has talked about that can come up in the future. So you've maintained that cushion to not lock in essentially future councils. So if you look across this, I think the best year to look at is the budget year 22-23. We already know what the valuation is going to be for that year. So then we get the state mandated limit of 275,601.
Dwayne, I have a question. Can we put this up on the screen? Because people are watching, I have no idea what you're talking about.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not sure.
If it's the big deal,
yeah.
I don't know how much time you want to spend.
I can't get to my drive on here. I'd have to sign out and sign back in, but
No worries.
I could.
No worries.
Can you just use the Elmo?
Yeah, the Elmo maybe.
Or is it all running through the computer?
Yeah, I think it's already through.
Oh.
Okay.
I think if people need to they're watching, they can jump online and go to the city's website, and they can get the Roman numeral 7 on the, it's published online too, so they can go ahead and
It is.
find that.
I've got this running as I
For tonight's
talk.
meeting, go to the agenda with the supplemental materials. Go ahead.
I think I just went to the website. Yeah, it's on the web now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, as I mentioned, that gives the 25% limit that the council reserves. So there's your unreserved debt capacity of 206,701. We have outstanding debt, and that's debt that's already in place of 53 million. As Steve mentioned, this is a bigger year because it's the first year of 2 years of issuance for the Aquatic Center. And so we'll have a total of debt outstanding projected at the end of this year of $72 million. So we'll have unreserved capacity. There's still a fair amount available of 134. The next year that goes down to 124, the second year that you're issuing for the Aquatic Center. And then it stays pretty steady. If you look down at the bottom, at about 68% of total capacity for the years going out. But you can see the total capacity actually going up because we project the value to increase each year also. Any questions on that?
One good thing is the council has a conservative approach in their policy of retaining that 25%. That usually gets us credit when we get rated. It is interesting though, if you've read those ratings, why we don't get a AAA rating. One has to do because we have a hospital, remember, and the uncertainty in the hospital industry, and they believe that we would support the hospital by issuing bonds if they ever got in a negative situation, which I don't know if that's the case or not because they issue revenue bonds usually. But sometimes they say that we have a high debt ratio, and I don't really, it doesn't seem that way to me. But if you remember that, in terms of a triple rated city, they believe our debt our ratio is very high. So I don't think we overdo it in debt. We're pretty prudent, and we try to pay off our debt quickly. Remember, most streets and everything, those kind of things are paid off in 12 years. When we get to some of those buildings, it goes out to 25 years. But I appreciate the conservative nature of the council, and that helps us. And even though we're not triple rated, A rated, we sell like a triple A rating sometimes, right? That's what counts. What's that day when you compare what our interest rate is, net interest rate when we sell compared to AAA rating, it's usually pretty comparable. So we want to keep that up. That saves us taxpayers money. Any questions or follow-up you want to have now? Pretty exciting. A lot of good stuff in here. A lot of good stuff we're doing this year. I think our department heads did a great job. Have a real vision for what you want this community to be like, and I think we're going to continue to improve it with your support.
Very good. Thank you, Dwayne, Nancy,
Thank you.
Steve. Excellent job. All right, we're going to move on to disposition of communications to council. We have 3 items. One is email from Mason Adams from Alliant Energy, which is essentially just I think they have a responsibility to let us know of any kind of rate increases. So that's just for your information. Secondly, we have a briefing from John Dunn. I know that some of you may have been aware of just some kind of article raising some red flags. I just thought this was an outstanding piece of information to help council understand, where we're at, and didn't catch them by surprise whatsoever. And so they're working at it strategically.
Yeah, one comment. Fire chief wanted to remind me that we do fire training ourselves. We do not use this particular product, nor if anybody is training in our facilities are they allowed to use it. So this strictly was a result of what was used. Remember that facility at Iowa State is actually closed down now, but it was used back when they had the fire training academy, but not from us and will not be used by us.
So this is just information, and then the other thing, item 3, memo from Tracy Peterson regarding allocation of funds to replace 4-inch water main, which was a referral from of our constituents asking about, what process we have. And we saw in our CIP that they're continuing to work towards that end as well, too. So there's a lot of miles of water main in our city. So anyway.
I did wonder in that it did mention South Maple specifically. Do we know how soon they will get to South Maple as part of this report?
I could find out for you if you like.
Okay, thank
Okay.
you, because it did look like they were specifically concerned about that.
Okay. 4-inch lines.
All right. With that, we'll go to council comments, and we'll start with you, Brahman, tonight.
Nothing for me.
All right, thank you. Rachel?
Nothing for me.
Nope. Just
Neat.
welcome back the students.
Yeah. Tim?
So Friday night, we got a little snow. And normally we like to have warm-up snow, but this was a 12.5-inch snow event, and I thought our city crews did an outstanding job. The roads Saturday morning were amazing. So Steve, if you could pass on a pat on the back from council to them, they worked while we slept.
They do a lot of hard work, and we appreciate the comments.
Yep. So to be able to hit the ball like that with the first major snow event being 12.5 inches was really super. So thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else, Tim?
Nope.
Gloria?
The MLK Day celebration was last night, and I think that ran very smoothly, and the employees that were involved with the event should be commended, and as should the rest of the committee. It was very inspiring, and even though the Meeker kids couldn't be present, they still were involved. So that's all I've got.
All right. Now, just, you mentioned this last week, Gloria, we have a goal-setting session on Saturday. So it starts at 8:30. And looking forward to meeting and looking for the future here. So with that, entertain motion to adjourn.
Move we adjourn?
We are adjourned. Thank you.
So, Anita, are you familiar with the trails at Reactor Woods?